Chapter 687. That's fast. Gu Fei was pleased. He liked efficiency. After greeting Gu Fei, the two of them widened their eyes in shock. The city? The two were shocked. What's wrong? You've successfully attacked the city? Strange Eye asked. Of course not, I'm defending the city, Gu Fei said. He knew that Strange Eye would continue asking, so he decided to tell him about the faction. I see. Strange Eye nodded. So this is Cloud City? Where are the clouds? Yin Xiaozhu asked. I don't know. Gu Fei scratched his head. The name of the main city in the game was usually a direct reflection of the regional style or scenery. The word cloud sounded like it was sitting on top of the clouds. Logically speaking, Cloud City should be a mountain city with a very high altitude, with clouds floating halfway up the mountain. But in reality, the scenery of Cloud City couldn't be any more vulgar. Outside the door there were plains, mountains, valleys, rivers, lakes, there was everything but clouds. Do you see that clock tower over there? Gu Fei pointed at the tallest building in the city. That's really tall. When you reach the top, you'll sometimes see clouds beside it. That's the clouds, Yin Xiaozhu said disdainfully. That's about right. The streets are full of clouds. That's your Xiaoyu city, Gu Fei said. What do you need my help with? Strange Eye asked. Let's talk on the way. Gu Fei led the two out of the city. Both sides were lined up. The battlefield was empty except for a trash picker picking up rocks in the middle of the field. Strange Eye and Yin Xiaozhu didn't understand. They looked at Gu Fei, hoping that he could explain. We're in a stalemate. Don't touch the NPCs or else you'll be attacked, Gu Fei said. Previously, he and Sword Demon had learned from Brother Yu about the attitude of the system soldiers towards neutral players. They wouldn't attack unless they were attacked. However, this offending me didn't just refer to attacking the guards. For example, if 3 attacking players attacked a guard while a neutral support player healed them and blessed them, the system would deem them as enemies and attack them. Brother Yu sneaked into the battlefield because he didn't want to fight, but he had no choice. Brother Yu would always accidentally walk into a place where he needed help, and the players would call out to him, "Brother, add strength," or something like that. Once Brother Yu added strength, the system would treat him as an enemy. If he didn't add it, he wouldn't be able to take it if he didn't add a bunch of people who were glaring at him. How's the fight over there? Gu Fei asked as he walked. Who knows? What can we see over there? Yin Xiaozhu said. Spectators were the absolute weakest group in Xiaowu City. They couldn't even see a chicken feather if they were more than 20 to 30 meters away. It was said that the players of Dawn Fog City and Forest Shade City had recently joined forces to protest to the game company, saying that the settings of these two cities were a bit too evil, which greatly affected the players' leveling lives. On the game experience leaderboard, these two cities had the least number of players. However, even though the overall ratio was small, both cities were at the top. Forest Shade City's former Water Depth and Xiaowu City's current Strange Pupil were both at the level of the top 5. In terms of overall level, according to the official statistics, the main city with the lowest average level was neither Xiaowu City nor Forest Shade City, but Moonlit Night City. Of course, everyone knew the reason, which was why the official forum had been arguing about it recently. As the three of them walked, Gu Fei told them about what Strange Pupil of Hope had done. Strange Pupil's footsteps slowed down as he listened, and in the end he stopped. Under the water? Yeah. Gu Fei finally had some humanity left in him. He asked, "Do you know how to swim?" Nope. You should have asked that earlier. Strange Pupil felt that he wouldn't be able to complete this mission. Actually, that's not the point. I don't know how to swim either, but I've been there before. Look, Gu Fei imparted his diving skills to Strange Pupil, but it was clearly not convincing. Strange Pupil looked very reluctant. It's a game, it's not that difficult. Even if you drown in the end. You won't lose levels during the city war, and you won't be registered. That's right, you'll be teleported back to Xiaowu City. I think this is a good idea. You don't have to come back in the end. Just drown and teleport back. That'll save you a teleportation scroll. Xiaozhu, do you know how to swim? No, we can go down together, Gu Fei said sincerely. Theoretically, third-party players should be able to enjoy the benefits of not losing levels. However, this time, it was unknown whether the system was being kind or too lazy to set up the rules, but the third-party players were able to enjoy the benefits of not losing levels. After realizing this, the third-party players who were leveling up today were extremely arrogant. They killed monsters, fought for territory and PK. They did not care about their lives anymore. Their lives were worthless. You're inhumane. Even so, Yin Xiaozhu still objected to Gu Fei's suggestion of drowning. Strange Pupil was furious, but since he was already here, he had no choice but to say, "Let's go take a look first." The three of them chatted as they walked. The system NPC did not look at them, but the guild players on the other side were staring at them. What was going on? They had tried so hard to get through the city gate, but these people were so carefree. Who were they? Strange Pupil felt the atmosphere was strange. Since you're the defender, then these. She pointed at the guild players on the other side. They're all enemies. Yes, Gu Fei said. Then isn't this too arrogant? Strange Pupil said. It is, but they don't dare to come over, Gu Fei said. Why? Do you see the rocks on the ground? They'll just come over. Isn't this the same in Xiaoyu City? Gu Fei asked. If Xiaoyu City is like this, then don't attack this city, Strange Pupil said. This was the truth. You only noticed the rocks when they were right in front of you. What's the point of hiding? You just die. Let's do this for now. We'll sneak into the crowd and pass through, Gu Fei said. Don't fight the NPCs and you can't buff other players either. Got it. Why would we buff other players? Yin Xiaozhu said impatiently. I heard you can't even pass bread or water. Gu Fei said sternly. This was Gu Fei's lie. He hoped that the two of them would take his words seriously. He had passed through the crowd many times, and he had almost been provoked by the fighting spirit to rise up with the players. Brother, you also died 5 times because of this. Otherwise, you wouldn't have learned your lesson and died 5 times. It was the environment that affected people. That atmosphere made people have the urge to rush up and start a massacre. When they entered the battlefield, Gu Fei finally understood the difference between men and women. Yin Xiaozhu was usually a lively girl, but now her eyes were cold. There were often players shouting beside them. Beauty over here, give him a stab. Beauty over here, whirlwind. The two of them did not even look and walked on. On the other hand, Gu Fei was immersed in the thick murderous intent, and almost could not control himself. This is too much suffering. Gu Fei was in pain. This was a great temptation to him. He had to use all his cultivation to calm himself down. Gu Fei picked them up and sent a message to Sword Demon. Actually, this quest had nothing to do with Sword Demon, but Sword Demon also wanted to see what was going on, so he immediately rushed back to Yunjiao Lake, arriving earlier than them. The customs and culture of Yunjiao Lake had to be introduced. Just as Gu Fei said, "Be careful of stepping on people." The two girls asked curiously, "Who?" Gu Fei was a practical person. He immediately cast a spell. The group of people jumped up and cursed again, but when they saw the two beautiful girls, they were at a loss. Everyone thought that girls would not do such bad things. Of course, this bad thing was not done by the two girls. The murderer was squatting beside them. Damn it, who is it? Over and over again, are you looking for death? A few of them were angry and cursed for a long time before stopping. You're too bad, Yin Xiaozhu said to Gu Fei. I just want to speak with facts. I want to describe it verbally. Can you understand it so vividly? Gu Fei spread his hands. When he arrived, the sword ghost was already waiting for him. They had met in Xiaowu City, so they casually greeted each other. Did I remember the location correctly? Sword Demon said. That's right. Gu Fei took out the torn paper and checked it again, then looked around. Find a piece of wood. Wait, I said to take a look. I haven't agreed yet. Strange Pupil said. Then take a look, Gu Fei said. Yin Xiaozhu walked a few steps into the lake and kicked the mud. She looked like she was about to vomit. Sis, it's so dirty. Do you really want to go into the water? Why are you still doing it when it's dirty? The more you do it, the dirtier it gets. This kid is so naughty. Gu Fei criticized Yin Xiaozhu. You're so unkind. You asked for help for something like this, Yin Xiaozhu said. I can't help it. Drifting said you knew this kind of spell. Why don't you recommend someone else? Who else can do it? Gu Fei said. Brother Drifting recommended someone? Yin Xiaozhu's eyes lit up. Sis, help him. Damn, you can't be serious, right? You changed your attitude so quickly? Drifting has such a big reputation? You like him? That kid is not a good person. He almost killed me in your city, Gu Fei said. Then why don't you go die? Yin Xiaozhu roared. Is there anyone who can control this child? He's lost his mind. Gu Fei shouted. Yin Xiaozhu was angry, but after being called out by strange pupil, she immediately calmed down. She just glared at Gu Fei again. How deep is the water? Strange pupil asked. 3 or 4 meters, I think. Gu Fei asked Sword Demon. 4 or 5 meters, I think, Sword Demon said. 3 or 4 meters, Gu Fei said to Strange Pupil. You have no idea. Strange Pupil couldn't hold it in anymore. If you really want to know the exact answer, I'll measure it for you, Gu Fei said. Strange Pupil was silent for a moment. I have another question. What? How do I chant it underwater? Strange Pupil asked. How do I chant it? How do I chant it? Gu Fei asked Sword Demon. How would I know? Who's a sorcerer? Sword Demon said. This, you know how good I am as a sorcerer. Gu Fei was in a difficult position. Strange Pupil was at his wit's end. He said, forget it, I'll figure it out myself. You agree? That's great. Sword Demon, get me a piece of wood. Gu Fei took out a rope from his pocket and gave it to Strange Pupil. Tie this around your waist. We don't know how to swim, right? Ask them to pull us up. Sword Demon, get some help. What do you need a piece of wood for? Strange Pupil asked. Carry it and float it over. You don't know how to swim either, right? Gu Fei said. Just fly over, Strange Pupil said. Fly? Oh, you can fly? Gu Fei suddenly remembered that Strange Pupil knew a flight spell. They had all climbed the walls in Xiaoyu City, but Strange Pupil had flown over them. I still need a piece of wood. I can't teleport that far. Gu Fei sighed. The sword ghost had already picked up a piece of rotten wood for him. He called out to the people around him. The group of brothers from before were still there, and they were so enthusiastic. When they heard that they were going to come back again, they all hurriedly came over. Let's go. Gu Fei pushed the piece of wood into the water and flopped around with it. He turned around and saw Strange Pupil still standing by the shore. He quickly called out to him. You go first. I'll fly when you arrive. I can't stay in the air for too long, Strange Pupil said. Big sis, I can't stay in the water and wait for you. Can you just follow me at this speed? Gu Fei asked. Then I'll go later, Strange Pupil said. When Gu Fei had floated half the distance with the piece of wood, Strange Pupil waved his staff. Everyone felt a small whirlwind blow past them. Strange Pupil was already in the air, chasing after Gu Fei. Wow! The players were shocked. They had never seen a spell like that before. Yin Xiaozhu was quite pleased. She held the rope around Strange Pupil's waist and turned around. It's like flying a kite. Gu Fei looked up and felt quite depressed. It was so cool to be flying in the air. Looking at himself, he was foolishly flopping around. Today's quest was really not dignified at all. Still, the quest to kill people was more comfortable. Gu Fei was almost at the destination. The distance was not a big deal. Gu Fei looked up and saw Strange Pupil looking at him from above. He called out. It's almost time. Get ready. Strange Eye's face flashed nervously. This was the fear of the unknown. Don't be afraid. Just grab me when you fall, Gu Fei said. Strange Pupil did not say anything. Are you ready? Take a breather. Strange Pupil closed his eyes. I'm going too fast. He's here. Strange Eye yelled. He suddenly fell from the sky. Gu Fei quickly pulled out a heavy object from his pocket. Even the piece of wood he was holding sank with him. Strange Pupil fell beside him with a splash. Gu Fei grabbed her and put down the piece of wood. The two of them quickly sank into the water. Gu Fei was experienced. He opened his eyes the moment he was in the water. He looked to the side. Strange Pupil's eyes were still tightly shut, and her expression was stiff. They soon reached the bottom of the water. Gu Fei shook Strange Pupil's head. This was the signal they had agreed on. Strange Pupil's expression was still stiff, but she slowly opened her eyes. However, she quickly closed them again. Gu Fei knew how it felt. He shook her head helplessly, indicating that she was fine. He dragged her towards the water barrier. Strange Eye held his breath and knew that he could not stay underwater for too long. Finally, he opened his eyes in one go. It hurt, but the feeling was exactly the same as what Gu Fei had described. She was relieved. She looked at Gu Fei, who was gesturing to her. Strange Pupil reached out and touched the water barrier. Gu Fei nodded, indicating that it was the water barrier. Strange Pupil took a step back. She took out her staff and pointed it at the water barrier. She covered her mouth with her left hand, preparing to cast a spell. However, as soon as she opened her mouth, bubbles appeared between her hands. Obviously, water had gone into her mouth. Of course, she could not make any sound, so she could not cast the spell. Gu Fei could not care less. He quickly reached out and covered her mouth. Gu Fei did not know if he had done it, but he tried his best. Strange Pupil struggled for a while and Gu Fei received a message. Be gentle. I can't even open my mouth. Gu Fei quickly loosened his grip, and Strange Eye took the opportunity to complete his incantation. With a tap of his wand, a bright blue light appeared, and a few rays of light climbed up the water barrier. Wherever they passed, a thin layer of ice formed. Before Gu Fei could rejoice, the water barrier became so fragile. There was no need for anyone to break it. The water pressure at the bottom of the lake easily broke it. Gu Fei and Strange Pupil felt a strong suction force coming from the hole. After the barrier disappeared, the lake water flowed rapidly, and the two of them were about to be sucked in. Pull! Gu Fei immediately sent out a message. Mistake. The sword ghost replied quickly. It turned out that the moment the barrier was broken, there was a strong pulling force coming from the rope. At this moment, the players on the shore were casually holding onto the ends of the ropes. They weren't prepared to exert any strength at all. Faced with such a sudden force, no one was able to react in time. With a whoosh, several people lost their grip. The players who were holding onto the ends of the ropes tightened their grip. Who would have thought that the two of them wouldn't be able to resist the suction force? They were directly dragged into the water along with the ropes. At this moment, the two of them didn't dare to hold onto the ropes and let go. One of them knew how to swim, so he swam up on his own. The other could not. He struggled in the water, screaming for help. It was a mess on the shore. Gu Fei's reaction was fast. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed the rock at the entrance of the cave. However, his little bit of strength was also very weak. This grab was just a formality. In the next step, he had already let go of the rock. With a whoosh, he was washed into the cave. Strange Pupil did not even have time to react. He was already in the cave. Gu Fei helped out at the last moment. Even though he did not manage to separate the two of them, he managed to grab hold of Strange Pupil, and he was swept into the cave even faster. Teleportation scroll. Gu Fei said as he reached into his pocket. He would not lose a level if he died, and he could return to Xiaowu City on the way. Gu Fei was just joking. He was not an irresponsible person. Not losing a level if he died and helping Strange Pupil escape were two different things. He took out the teleportation scroll and used it immediately. The scroll did not lose its effect underwater. He immediately set up a teleportation formation. Fuck! Gu Fei cursed and drank a mouthful of water. The teleportation formation had appeared, but the two of them were no longer within its range. The water had swept the two of them away, but the teleportation formation was still operating. Gu Fei was dizzy from the force of the water. Strange Pupil was probably not faring any better. The river was full of waves. Gu Fei only knew that he was still holding on to the person, but he could not see clearly. Gu Fei struggled to look ahead. It was dark, so he had no idea what was in front of him. However, an idea came to him. He let go of Strange Pupil and pointed forward. Teleport. Chapter 688. Teleporting as fast as he could, Gu Fei was sent flying 6 meters away. No matter how strong the water was, it could not outrun teleportation. Gu Fei turned around and swung the dark night streamer, chanting again, "Wall of electricity. Rise." The wall of electricity, which was said to be able to block everything, was formed in an instant. It was big enough to cover the entire underground tunnel. The resplendent lightning bolts lit up the dark tunnel. Gu Fei glanced around and saw that the water flow was slightly hindered, but the lightning bolts were quickly losing their brilliance. He reckoned that they would be washed away once they completely dimmed. Gu Fei was relieved when he saw that strange pupil had not been sent to the other side by the wall of electricity. However, the girl seemed to have lost her consciousness. She was lying motionless in the puddle. Gu Fei did not have time to think. He quickly ran over and grabbed her. He had already taken out a teleportation scroll with his other hand. Quick! Gu Fei yelled at the teleportation portal as he turned back to look at the wall of electricity. The tunnel was plunged into darkness as if the lights had been switched off. The sound of the surging lake water shook Gu Fei's eardrums. The white light from the teleportation portal finally lit up. Gu Fei used the light to confirm Strange Pupil's presence, and he was scared out of his wits. Strange Pupil's face looked like a ghost when the white light shone on him. "Can I make it in time?" Gu Fei mumbled in his heart. The white light and the lake water surrounded both of them at the same time. At a leveling spot outside of Cloud City, a group of players who did not participate in the city war were taking advantage of the fact that they would not lose a level if they died. Suddenly, there was a flash of white light on the ground, and two people appeared. The sound of water splashing accompanied their appearance. The teleportation scroll was very serious. Even the water within the white light was transferred over, and it splashed on Gu Fei and Strange Pupil. The surrounding players all stopped what they were doing and stared blankly at the two drenched players who had suddenly appeared. Gu Fei could not care less. The Strange Pupil was leaning heavily on him. It was obvious that he had not regained consciousness. However, it was not difficult to deal with a power outage in the game. Gu Fei supported her and shook her a few times, and Strange Pupil gradually woke up. At that moment, a large crowd gathered around them. Someone came closer and asked curiously, "Brother, what's going on? How did this happen?" "He fell into the water," Gu Fei said. Who couldn't tell? Everyone actually wanted to know more details, but it was really hard for them to ask. Strange I had regained consciousness by then. He shook his head a few times and was completely awake. He was shocked to see the crowd surrounding him. He turned around and saw Gu Fei beside him. He asked, "What happened?" "It's nothing. I used a teleportation scroll to teleport me out." Gu Fei heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Strange Pupil was fine. He took out an apple, wiped it, and was about to eat it. It was a good habit that Gu Fei had developed in the game to maintain his mana at all times to prepare for the upcoming PK. "What happened? Why didn't you stop us?" Gu Fei ate as he questioned the sword demon. "It was too sudden. I wasn't prepared." "What happened?" The sword demon kept calling Gu Fei, but Gu Fei did not have the time to reply. As soon as the water enchantment was frozen, it immediately broke. "The two of us were washed into the cave by the water," Gu Fei said. "Oh, what about now?" the sword demon asked. "I used a teleportation scroll to teleport me out. It's fine now," Gu Fei said. Gu Fei contacted the sword demon, and Strange Pupil also told Yan Xiaozhu about what happened. Everyone was relieved when they learned that everything was fine. "Let's go." Strange Pupil called for Gu Fei to leave after sending the message. It was a very embarrassing thing for a young lady to be surrounded by so many people. Although the players were very curious, they couldn't stop the two of them from getting to the bottom of the matter. They could only watch as the two monsters left, muttering to themselves in private. "Is there anything else?" Strange Pupil asked Gu Fei after looking at himself. No, thank you so much," Gu Fei quickly said. "That's it? That's it. Why did you do that?" Strange Pupil was actually someone who liked to do research. This was evident from the technical analysis he performed on Gu Fei when the non-smiler was killed. "I still don't know. I have to go back to the city again." Gu Fei's task today was to run back and forth. "If there's nothing else, I'll go back with Xiaozhu," Strange Pupil said. "It's rare that you're here. You can take a walk around." Gu Fei said. "We're in the middle of a city war. What's there to walk around? Besides, I look like..." It was rare for a lady to care about her image. "Don't worry, you'll recover soon," Gu Fei assured Strange Eye. as someone who had been through this before. Then I'll dry myself here. Strange pupil said in a self-deprecating tone. He did not want to walk around in such a wet state anymore. That's fine. Ask Xiaozhu and the others to come over. I'll go back to the city to hand in the quest, Gu Fei said. Goodbye. Gu Fei made his way back to the city gate, as if he was very familiar with it. There was still no movement outside the north gate. Little Ray, who was picking up stones, was gone. Gu Fei made his way out of the chaotic battlefield, and hurriedly walked towards the north gate without looking back. At this time, reigning the Four Seas could no longer hold back. They should not have believed the Han family young master's words. But Unsworn Sword did not want to lose face and doubt him because of Gu Xiaoshang's presence. To him, the fact that Gu Xiaoshang lied to him was even more damaging. But now Qianli, who seemed to want to destroy him, was walking in and out of the north gate of Cloud City. Unsworn Sword could not help but wonder. That guy must have lied to Xiaoshang as well. What's his purpose in creating this rumor? Reflection, tell us. Our competition has always been Singing to Wine, and he's a member of Singing to Wine. I said that we should be on our guard. Reflected Year said. But I don't see any movement from Singing and Wine either. After the alliance fell out, Reigning the Four Seas and Singing to Wine were watching each other carefully, afraid that the other would do something. I don't know what this Qianli is up to when he's drunk. Reflection, bring a few people with you. When he comes out again, go around and ask him. Unsworn Sword said. What? What's going on? How am I supposed to ask? Reflection didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Am I supposed to ask if you're here to kill our guild leader? Don't say it, just ask. I don't think Qianli is the type to hide anything when he's drunk. If you ask him like that, he'll definitely give you a definite answer. Unsworn Sword said. Aren't you being too blind? That guy's really sneaky. Reflection said. If I tell you to ask, then go and ask. You won't lose a level if you die. What are you afraid of? Unsworn Sword said. Me? What's there to be afraid of? What's this called? Reflection felt incredibly embarrassed. Even if it was a game, running up to someone and asking, "Are you here to kill me?" was just too naive. How naive and degrading was that? Reflection Years wasn't someone who didn't care about his face. Fengxing. Hey Fengxing, don't go. Unsworn Sword turned his head and called for Fengxing again. Fengxing immediately ran. Grandmasters of combat were faster than warriors after all. Unsworn Sword could not catch up even if he wanted to. He then received a message from Fengxing. I'm not going. If you're not going, then I'm going. Unsworn Sword said. Fine, you can go. If he really has this quest, then tell him to kill it. That way, we won't have to worry about it. Reflection said unhappily. Then what do you think we should do? Unsworn Sword was also angry. Why don't we look for Yutian Shenming? Reflection said. Look for him? What can he do? Actually, we just want to know what's going on, don't we? No matter what, Yutian is still part of our guild. If we ask him to help us find out some information, I don't think there's any reason for him not to help us. During this city war, if our guild does well, he'll also benefit. Reflection said. Unsworn Sword felt that it was reasonable and nodded. Then let's go look for him. Yutian Shenming was just a brat. He didn't have any real power or position in Reigning Four Seas, but in society's terms, this kid had a rather deep background. That was why Unsworn Sword and Reflection didn't make a fuss in the guild channel. After asking for his whereabouts, they personally went to look for him. Yutian Shenming usually acted alone, with the experts of the mercenary group, or with the reborn Amethyst Maiden. He only interacted with Reigning Four Seas a little when he first joined, but later on, he didn't really have any close friends. When Unsworn Sword and Reflection came over, they saw Yutian Shenming carrying 3 bows on his back, angrily sitting on a wooden pillar. If the 3 bows were to be used interchangeably, it was actually more convenient to keep them in one's pocket. Yutian Shenming would put the bows in his pocket during a real battle, but normally, he would carry them all out, pretending to be a trendy guy. All teenagers did this. Yutian, what are you doing here? Unsworn Sword chuckled as he walked up. He felt a lot of pressure in front of people like Gu Fei and the Han family young master, but Yu Tianxinming was nothing to be afraid of. Yu Tianxinming's face darkened. He raised his head and saw that it was the two heads of the guild. He didn't think much of it and replied casually, "Sit." "Ahem, about that. Where are the brothers in the mercenary group? Are they all fine?" Unsworn Sword asked. "They're all dead," Yu Tianxinming said. What happened? How did they all die?" Unsworn Sword was shocked. "How would I know?" Yu Tianxinming roared in annoyance, stood up and left. Unsworn Sword was rooted to the spot, and only came back to his senses after a while. He looked at Reflection and said blankly, "Damn, what's going on? Who provoked him?" Reflection looked at the brothers around him and asked, "Did he get into a fight with someone?" "No," everyone replied. "Fuck, what the fuck is going on today?" Unsworn Sword was really mentally and physically exhausted as the guild leader. He had over 1,000 people with him, but any random brat could throw a tantrum at him. Only in the game could he feel so stifled. "Right. Why don't we ask Brother Yu for help? I have him as a friend," Reflection said. "Can he do it?" Unsworn Sword said. "Let's give it a try," Reflection said and sent a message, but it was a frozen reply from the system. Reflection said helplessly, "Messages are off." "Then who else is there?" "Only Unscathed in Battle is left," Unsworn Sword said. I know his Home of Warriors guild leader Lan Hufeng. Why don't we ask?" Asking anyone would be more reliable than directly asking 1,000 miles drunk, Reflection of Time said. "Alright, I'll ask. Brother Wuxiang is quite kind. Otherwise he wouldn't be playing as a warrior," Unsworn Sword said. As a warrior, they would either be very close to those of the same class, or they would think that they were the best, and that they were all noobs. Unsworn Sword belonged to the former, but unfortunately, Unscathed in Battle belonged to the latter. From this, it could be seen that Unsworn Sword had misjudged him again. After receiving a message from Home of Warriors guild leader Lan Hufeng, and adding Unscathed in Battle as a friend, Unsworn Sword sent a message. "Brother Wuxiang, I want to ask you something." "What is it?" "Did Qianli's drunk and sword demon receive a quest to assassinate me?" Unsworn Sword asked the kind and honest Unscathed in Battle. Unscathed in Battle received the message and immediately spread it in the mercenary channel. "Hey, what's going on? Unsworn Sword is asking me about Qianli and Sword Demon's quest. Doesn't he already know?" "Oh, after watching Qianli and Sword Demon not make a move for so long, he's not sure, right?" "Brother, you guessed." "Oh, then how should I reply to him? Qianli Sword Demon?" Unscathed in Battle called out. "Whatever." Sword Demon didn't care at all. "Where's Qianli?" Unscathed in Battle asked. Gu Fei had already entered the city, so he couldn't receive messages from outside the city, so he couldn't see the situation here. On the other hand, Han family young master really had the urge to kick these guys out of the mercenary group. They really had no position. With this kind of attitude, how could they still fight this city war? Did they not know that these two guys were actually opponents? The system was also funny. It drew a line in private chat, and created a mercenary channel to communicate between the three parties. "Gongzi, do you have any objections?" Unscathed in Battle asked one by one. "Disappear immediately," Han family young master said. Unscathed in Battle immediately shut up and replied to Sword Without Oath. "What exactly do you want to know?" "Nothing, I just want to know if it's true or not," Sword Without Oath said. "It's true, absolutely true," Unscathed in Battle said. Then when are they going to make a move? This Qianli has been in and out a few times since he got drunk. What are they busy with?" Sword Without Oath asked. "How would I know?" Unscathed in Battle said. Brother Wuxiang, can you tell me if Qianli and Sword Demon, no matter what the mission is, can they just let it go? If there are any losses, if I can bear it, then leave it to me. Sword Without Oath had over 1,000 men under him. It wasn't that they were afraid of the threat from these two, but the key was that these two weren't machines from the system, so they didn't know when they would come. There was a saying, "Don't be afraid of a thief stealing, but be afraid of a thief remembering." Sword Without Oath was currently in such a state. If you really wanted to kill me, then it would be over in one go. He didn't know when this dilly-dallying would come. Sword Without Oath was hanging in the air, not knowing where to go. Moreover, he didn't dare to let his guard down, because he guessed that the assassination penalty that was arranged as a mission would be extraordinary. It wasn't something that could be easily dealt with after being thrown into the camp, so he didn't dare to show himself and end his days of fear. The city war had already gone on for 2 rounds. Countless normal players had died, but the guild leaders hadn't really died. Everyone was worried about this setting, afraid that the guild leader's death would be worth 1,000 gold, so they protected him well. After struggling for so long, the system didn't show anything like a score, so the players didn't know what to do. Unscathed in Battle received the message and helplessly replied, "Then I'll help you ask." Thank you. If this succeeds, Brother Wuxiang will definitely thank you." Sword Without Oath was quite a good person. Really? Then what else is there to say? Just wait. Unscathed in Battle hurriedly returned to the mercenary channel. Sword Demon called 8 times, attracting the attention of Sword Demon. Then he said, "Sword Without Oath asked me to bring you a message. As long as you give up on this mission, there will be great benefits." Oh. Sword Demon was really speechless. Is there a need for this? After all, it's just 2 people. Is Sword Without Oath this scared? Brother, you said. This is because he doesn't want to lose the big picture for the small. With these 2 experts standing behind you, you won't feel at ease doing anything. Sword Without Oath wants to focus on the city war, and doesn't want to waste time here. Han Family Young Master said calmly. He had a good grasp of Sword Without Oath's mentality. It sounds quite pitiful. Brother Yu sighed. What about Qianli? Why hasn't Qianli said anything? Unscathed in Battle asked. Although Gu Fei couldn't see the message, Sword Demon told Gu Fei everything. Gu Fei's meaning was 3 words. Who cares about him? Sword Demon deeply agreed. He also felt that Sword Without Oath's behavior was like cheating. It was quite disgraceful. Gu Fei had already returned to the guard room. After going back and forth a few times, he was about to throw up. As soon as he entered the room, he reported the situation to the captain. His voice was very loud, so that the great magician could also hear. The water barrier had been broken. Okay, go find Gilkino and ask him about the use of this water channel. The captain said. What, find him again? What kind of mission is this? It's endless. Gu Fei was angry. He hated running errands the most, especially those that didn't let him kill people. Why would the NPC care about his complaints? In any case, when Gu Fei opened his mouth again, the captain would say, "Why haven't you left yet? Hurry up and go. Hurry up and win the city defense." And so on. Gu Fei had no choice but to slam the door and run out of the meeting room. On the other side, Sword Without Oath couldn't resolve this mission through Unscathed in Battle and Gu Fei Sword Demon. He was depressed and didn't know what to do. Then he saw Gu Fei walk out of the north gate and arrogantly wander around the empty space in front of the city. The guild players were already used to this. Sword Without Oath gritted his teeth. He wants to drag it out, but we don't have time to drag it out. All guilds, listen up, follow Qianli's movements. The goal is to kill him. Damn, there's finally something to do. The players, who had been lonely for a long time, were a little excited when they heard that there was something to do, but the goal was just one person. Everyone knew how scary Qianli was when he was drunk, but now that the guild had gathered their strength, no one was afraid of him. Arrow team, move out first. Thieves, spread out and wait for an opportunity. Everyone else, follow me. With Sword Without Oath's command, Raining the Four Seas finally set off. Chapter 689. After a long period of silence, there was finally some movement outside the northern gate. Unhindered was the first to make a move. The guilds on this side were all watching each other. Unhindered's movement alarmed countless secret agents. Many pairs of eyes stared intently at Unhindered, wanting to see what he was up to. Unhindered's direction clearly confused them. It looked like they were leaving the northern gate. Naturally, the one who was most concerned about Unhindered Four Seas was their old rival, Singing to Wine. The thieves that Countercurrent had sent out to scout had almost surrounded Unhindered Four Seas. At this moment, Countercurrent was constantly reporting unhindered forces movements to Countercurrent. What are they trying to do? Countercurrent pondered, his gaze falling on Gu Fei, who was walking arrogantly below the city walls. Countercurrent had long since noticed Gu Fei. However, this was a calamity that no one could avoid. Countercurrent's quest had been tormented by him and the sword demon, so he had been on tenterhooks for quite some time. To be honest, the existence of these two fellows was quite annoying. If they went to deal with him, it didn't seem worthwhile to spend so much effort. If they didn't go to deal with him, the two of them kept moving around, making people feel uncomfortable. As Countercurrent listened to the reports from Unhindered, he gradually linked them to Gu Fei. He was quite puzzled as to why Unsworn Sword was so determined. Were they gathering 1,000 players to give Qianli a drunken feast? However, even if they did, they would only send him to a revival point. They wouldn't be able to solve the root of the problem. This was also one of the reasons why Countercurrent felt disgusted by these two. Of course, he didn't know that Unsworn Sword was currently heavily entangled with these two. He could only take the initiative and eliminate these two. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to sit still. Guild leader, I think they're targeting Qianli's drunken feast. The secret agent also noticed the signs and discussed with Countercurrent. Yeah, I can see it too. There's something fishy going on here. Countercurrent did not believe that Unsworn Sword would do something so strenuous. There had to be a reason for him to gather all of the guild's strength to deal with Qianli's drunken feast. Gu Fei wasn't blind, so how could he not notice the commotion caused by reigning the four seas? Seeing that the speed professions were moving at the same pace as him, and some were even faster than him, Gu Fei felt like he understood a little, and sent a message to Sword Demon. Where are you? This is our chance. What? Reigning the four seas has made a move. Gu Fei said. What action? Sword Demon asked. Looks like he's going to take the initiative to find me, Gu Fei said. You call this an opportunity? Sword Demon felt sad for Sword Without Oath. Gu Fei's thoughts were always so infuriating. We'll only have a chance if they make a move. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to deal with 1,000 people. You know, my magic power is only that little, Gu Fei said. Sword Demon was speechless again. This was the first time Gu Fei had openly expressed that if he had enough magic power, even 1,000 people wouldn't be a problem. I'm heading towards the west gate. I think he's coming this way. You should sneak over too. If there's a chance, we'll make a move, Gu Fei said. Then what about Strange Eye and Yin Xiaozhu? Sword Demon asked. What do they want? Has Strange Eye dried yet? Gu Fei asked. He has. Sword Demon replied. What kind of stupid question was this? Then let them do as they please, Gu Fei said. So Sword Demon conveyed Gu Fei's greeting of have you done it, and do as you please to Strange Eye. Yin Xiaozhu was curious. What do you want to do? Assassinate someone, Sword Demon said. Who? Yin Xiaozhu asked. Our guild leader. You guys probably don't know him, right? Sword Demon said. The guild leader of Cloud City, Sword Without Oath and Against the Current are more famous. Are they the two? Strange Eye asked. It's Sword Without Oath. Sword Demon nodded. Then what do you need help with? Strange Eye asked. Sword Demon smiled bitterly. The human guild has more than 1,000 people. We only have 4 people including you two. Qianli said that the opportunity has come. I really don't see where the opportunity is. Strange Eye and Yin Xiaozhu didn't know how to answer either. One person facing 1,000 people, and saying that they had an opportunity was something normal people wouldn't think of. No matter what, I'll go take a look first, Sword Demon said. We have nothing to do too. Let's go take a look. Strange Eye and Yin Xiaozhu followed casually. When the 3 of them moved towards the west gate, Gu Fei didn't move towards the west gate. He picked up his sword and headed towards the direction of reigning the 4. Sword Without Oath received the report. When he saw that it was true, he immediately stopped the team. Reigning the 4 stopped and looked suspiciously at Gu Fei, who was walking towards them alone. The secret agents also found their positions and continued to observe everything in front of them. I'll go greet him, Reflected Years said. Go. Sword Without Oath didn't dare show his face. He was afraid that if Gu Fei saw him, he would mysteriously die. After all, this person couldn't be judged by normal standards. Reflected Years walked out from the crowd. When he saw Gu Fei approaching, he secretly gave the order for the arrow formation to be ready. If he really entered the range of the arrow formation, he would immediately give the order to kill him. Reflected Years thought. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei stopped when he was about to enter the range of the sharpshooters. He waved at the players from reigning the four. What's the meaning of this? Reflected Years asked around in confusion. It seems like he's saying something. I think his lips are moving. Someone beside him said. Of course I saw it too. Reflected Years said. Louder. Reflected Years shouted at Gu Fei, but he still couldn't hear what Gu Fei was saying. At this time, Fengxing also came forward. Reflected Years hurriedly asked him. Look, what are you saying? How can I see from so far away? Fengxing was an expert at lip reading, but at this distance he couldn't even find his mouth. I think he's deliberately not making any noise. He wants us to hear what he's saying and lure us forward. A guild member said. He can't be that childish, right? Reflected Years said. Everyone spread their hands to indicate that they didn't know. Reflected Years could only spread his hands and report to Sword Without Oath. I don't know what he's up to. Countless eyes were already focused on the north gate. Gu Fei was alone, facing off against 1,000 players from reigning the four. No one moved forward and they just waited. Gu Fei wasn't anxious at all, but reigning the four had thousands of players. They were all thinking about Gu Fei's intentions. Sword Demon, Strange Pupil, and Yen Xiaozhu had also arrived. They didn't go to the west gate. From afar, they saw Gu Fei and reigning the four. They didn't know what they were up to. As they rushed over, they sent a message and asked, What are you doing? Waiting, Gu Fei said. Waiting for what? I'll just stay here and see what they'll do. Gu Fei said. What to do? Reigning the four really didn't know what to do. They said they were going to take the initiative to deal with Qianli, but now Qianli was standing in front of them. But if they went up, they wouldn't just have to face Qianli alone, but also the catapults on the city wall. If it wasn't for the attacks, reigning the four would have already rushed up. Qianli's drunk is too vicious. Time's reflection finally understood. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What? Sword Without Oath asked. Doesn't he mean that you guys want to take care of me? Fine, stand here, bring it on. In the end, we can't go up. Let's go? Before we left, we said we wanted to take care of Qianli, but now that he's drunk, it's all nonsense. This guy is purposely putting us in a difficult position. Time's reflection said. Io, why am I so unlucky? Tears streamed down Sword Without Oath's face. Being targeted by Qianli's drunk was the only honor. He didn't want to fight with reigning the four. He was more than willing to give it to reigning the four. We can't just waste time like this. He's alone and he's thick-skinned. He's not afraid of anything. We have so many eyes on us. Time's reflection said. At this moment, Sword Without Oath couldn't care less about the gazes of the other guilds. Now even their own guild was being gossiped about. The other party was only one person, yet they couldn't take him down. The normal members didn't have the heart to understand the difficulty of this. They only felt vexed and felt that the leadership had no idea what to do. We can't just let others laugh at us. Let's see how he reacts. Everyone spread out and prepared to attack. At Unsworn Sword's command, the guild members finally understood. Although they had reservations about the command, they still obeyed it in the end. Reigning the four began to spread out. This was to make space for them to avoid the boulders. After so long, they had only gained this little bit of experience in sieging a city. After all, the number one guild had gathered experts with outstanding awareness and experience. With this command, the formation spread out in an orderly manner. Moreover, every small square formation was a combination of different classes. Even Reigning's arrow formation, which was a specialty of the Four Seas, had formed a small team. Sword Without Oath looked forward to Gu Fei's reaction, but Gu Fei's reaction was no. Sword Without Oath's heart was broken. Look at us, even if we just turned around and ran, we'd at least have an explanation. If we went any deeper, we'd be attacked by the system, and we'd be too embarrassed to chase after him. But now he's still not moving. What do we do? Do we go or not? Reflection Years asked. Sword Without Oath looked around. The brothers around him were already very annoyed. Regardless of whether they lived or died, they had to do something. If they continued to drag this out, it would be very vexing. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Go!" Raining the Four Seas charged over, but it wasn't lively at all. Everyone knew who their target was. It would be a joke if there were 1,000 of them yelling and screaming at the same time when they were charging at a single person. The players of Raining the Four Seas were all frowning as they charged forward. The atmosphere was very stifling. Sword Without Oath was at his wit's end. There was only one opponent, and he couldn't think of anything to cheer them up. In the end, it was Reflection Years who came up with an idea. He raised his arm in the guild channel and shouted, "Brothers, do your best. The one who kills Chinli will be rewarded with 200 gold. 200 gold coins was not a small sum, especially in this delicate economic situation. Although some people didn't care for this kind of thing, there were still some who were tempted by the money. Reflection Years' words more or less changed the mentality of some people, but in the end, no one dared to make a fuss about it. At this moment, the catapults started moving. Large boulders fell from the sky. Everyone was experienced in dodging these things, so they did it relatively calmly. However, the neat formation at the beginning was bound to be a little messy at this time. This was what Gu Fei was very happy to see. But what made him depressed was that he couldn't see Sword Without Oath. It was obvious that Sword Without Oath knew his goal, and wouldn't reveal himself so easily. "I'm coming." To everyone's surprise, it was Gu Fei who let out a roar and suddenly raised his sword to meet the 1,000 or so players from Raining the Four Seas. His first move was teleportation, and he floated towards the nearest attacking Raining the Four Seas player. 2 streaks of light shot out, and he didn't continue fighting after that. He calmly observed the situation in front of him, and moved towards a place with fewer people. The spectating players from the other guilds were in an uproar. Like Raining the Four Seas, everyone had no idea what Gu Fei was thinking. However, when they saw that he actually dared to challenge 1,000 people, they couldn't help but be envious of his boldness. One against many. This was the dream of every player in the game. At first, Sword Without Oath and Reflection Years were afraid that Gu Fei would run away as soon as they charged in. They couldn't afford to play around with such a shameless prank. Now that they saw Gu Fei actually dare to challenge them, their spirits were lifted. Sword Without Oath was also energized, and he shouted in the channel, "Good boy, you really dare to challenge us? Everyone listen up. Whoever can kill this bastard will pay 500 gold." These words were a huge boost of morale and emotion. The players of Raining the Four Seas were no longer scared, and they began to chase after Gu Fei with murderous intent. Team 1, circle around to the left. Team 2, circle around to the right. Team 3, cut off his retreat. Team 4, maintain your attacks. The rest, join the battle as soon as possible. Reflection Years also began to command the battle, as they had to widen their positions, and Gu Fei took the initiative to attack them not long after entering the battlefield. Raining the Four Seas still had more than half of their teams that had not entered the battlefield. At this time, they could only continue to spread out to the left and right, widening their formation and entering the battlefield. "Damn it, don't go up and fight him one-on-one. You're asking for death." For at once, a player who didn't care about his life rushed forward, and was instantly killed. For won't do anything? 8. For people rushed forward, and with a 720-degree dual flame flash, they were instantly killed. Don't let him rush out. Maintain your attacks. Don't let him stop to recover his mana. Gu Fei, who had exhausted his mana, flashed behind a large boulder, and disappeared. What's with the catapults? He's controlling them, isn't he? Why is he so cooperative? A few players who wanted to harass Gu Fei were disrupted by the falling boulders. Where is he? Where is he? There are so many eyes, can't they see him? When they chased behind the boulder, Gu Fei was nowhere to be seen. There are too many boulders, it's a mess. System, help me. Gu Fei was entangled with the players in this area, and the catapults continued to attack. The boulders that fell would occupy a piece of land, and the battlefield had become like a maze. At XXX position, Team 2 and 3 go. Someone at XXX position was instantly killed, and sent a message. What? He's gone again? Fuck his ancestors. Reflection Years was on the verge of breaking down. Where's Team 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9? Why aren't they here yet? What? They can't come up? Why can't they come up? Reflection Years had the urge to eat someone alive. Why was everything not going his way? They can't go any further. If they go any further, the formation will have to shrink. The team leader reported. Reflection Years looked at the positions of these teams. Wasn't that right? How much space could Gu Fei take up by himself? Originally, they wanted to surround and take them down, but they had neglected a major problem. Under the threat of the catapults, the formation had to maintain a certain degree of space, which led to shrinking the encirclement to a certain extent. This caused them to be unable to shrink any further, and if they shrank any further, they would not be able to dodge the catapult's boulders. Where are the long-range attackers? Reflection Years continued to shout. The long-range attackers reported with tears streaming down their faces. Tell us where he is. Don't care where he is. Mages, go forward and choose your own areas. Bombard. Carpet bombard. Reflection Years roared. As a result, many people made space for the mages, so that they could bombard the area in front of them. That was when Gu Fei appeared. Did he still use spells against mages? He could just punch and kick. Although he couldn't kill them with 2 punches, he could push them under the flying boulders with 1 slap. They would die a more straightforward death. Protect them. Damn it, why isn't there anyone to protect the mages? Reflection Years roared. Protect? We have to keep our distance. How are we going to protect them? Protect my ass. Don't you know what prediction is? Prediction. Prediction my ass. That guy burrowed into the pile of boulders after a few hits. Who knows where he'll come out from? Bombard wherever he burrowed, hurry up. Damn it, aren't we bombarding him? What are you shouting for? The players were clearly tormented, and they weren't in a good mood. There was a spectacular scene of countless people retorting to Reflection Years' command. Since the founding of Reigning the Four Seas, there had never been such a disharmonious situation in a group battle. Reflection Years couldn't hold on any longer. His commands couldn't do anything to Gu Fei. In the end, it was inevitable that he would give orders that he couldn't carry out. How could he not be scolded? The surrounding players were also dumbfounded. More and more boulders were piled up on the ground. Some places were already piled up. If this continues, we'll have to build a wall, right? No, I think we'll build a fort. It can't be that square, right? I think it'll be a pyramid. Yes, a pyramid. This conclusion was agreed upon by many. How is it? Did you find the Sword of No Oath? Gu Fei was also sending a message to Sword Demon. The boulders were like a maze. Not only could Reigning the Four Seas not keep track of his movements, but he was also getting more and more confused about Reigning the Four Seas movements. Killing people now was a coincidence. While he was running, someone suddenly appeared in front of him, and he would go and kill him. Reigning the Four Seas spells had actually hit Gu Fei several times, but the firepower wasn't concentrated enough, and he couldn't kill him. Gu Fei was very focused on recovery. When he had time, he would eat bread and fruits, and he would grind away at Reigning the Four Seas. Reigning the Four Seas was thrown into chaos by him. Sword Demon was quietly approaching from the periphery, searching for the Sword of No Oath. Chapter 690. No, I haven't found it yet. Sword Demon replied to Gu Fei's message. How are you doing? Can you still hold on? You're too good, Gu Fei said. In this area, there was no chance of a castle appearing, but a pyramid was a possibility. Currently, the boulders were piled higher and higher, and Gu Fei was feeling more and more at ease. With these boulders, there were countless safe houses. Even if he hid in a corner, no spells would be able to reach him. As a result, Gu Fei didn't have to worry about anything. He peeked out everywhere, and whenever he found a pitiful lone Reigning Seas player, he would harvest them. How many have died? At this moment, Unsworn Sword was nestled in the middle of the crowd. He wasn't too far ahead, but he wasn't too far behind either. As he dodged the flying boulders, he asked the player beside him who was in charge of the battle statistics. 54. The player's expression was ugly. 54. Of course, this was only a very small proportion compared to the thousands of people who could traverse the 4 seas. However, the opponent was only a single person. Even if the person was a heaven-defying expert, the people of traversing the 4 seas would still feel embarrassed. Hold on. Unsworn Sword encouraged them in the channel. Tears streamed down the faces of the entire guild. 1,000 people against 1 person, and the guild leader's instruction was to hold on. Reflection: think of something. Unsworn Sword was the best at giving Reflection Years a hard time. Wasn't Reflection Years also trying to think of something? Truth be told, the threat posed by the catapults wasn't that great anymore. Gu Fei wasn't the only one who could use the boulders as cover. Players from Tyrannical Sea were able to dig through the cracks between the rocks to avoid the attacks of the boulders. Dodging had gradually become an instinct for them. Relying on the gaps between their positions to evade the attacks was no longer a viable method. The original gaps had been filled up by the boulders, and some players had no place to stand, so they had to climb on top of the boulders. Reflection Years was worthy of being Raining Sea's inept advisor. As he watched, he came up with a plan. He waved his hand and called out in the channel, "Strength classes, come forward." "What are we doing?" the strength class player asked. Listening to the commander's words was already a thing of the past. From the beginning, no matter what the reflection of time said, everyone would question it. Push the boulder. Didn't Qianli not want to come out when he was drunk? That's good. In that case, he'll never come out again. Everyone move the boulders and fill in the gaps for him. Reflection Years hadn't been so confident in this idea for a long time. This time he was very confident in this idea. The other players in the guild agreed with this idea. Some strength-type players were already getting to work. From high to low, from back to front, from left to right, everyone worked hard to push the boulders around them towards the center. No matter where Gu Fei was, if he didn't move, he would be squeezed between the boulders. Attention, arrow formation team and magicians. If you see traces of Qianli, open fire immediately. Don't worry about who's around him. Those who die because of this will receive a compensation of 100 gold coins. As Reflection Years spoke, the players worked even harder. The system's catapults were now their accomplices. They continued to reinforce the walls while adding bricks and tiles to their hands. Raining Seas players were working in full swing. Not only was this tactic effective, but Gu Fei was also trying to survive in the cracks. With Raining Seas move, the cracks were getting smaller and smaller. There were places where no one could enter at all. Gu Fei could clearly feel that the space he had to move in was getting smaller. Although he had killed a few players, they no longer paid attention to his attacks. They were focused on carrying out their plan. This can't go on. Gu Fei thought to himself. He wanted to break out of the encirclement, but he didn't expect all directions to be dead ends. They were all blocked by boulders. Gu Fei had no choice but to climb up. As soon as he peeked out, the sharpshooters and magicians that Reflection Years had set up immediately saw him. With a shout, arrows and spells flew towards him. Fortunately, Gu Fei reacted quickly enough, and quickly fell back down to find a place to hide. Then he heard a boom. Even the light in front of him had dimmed. Gu Fei looked up. The boulder next to where he had peeked out had suddenly started to roll and collapse. Gu Fei didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly changed directions to find a way out. In just a short while, 2 of the original directions had been cut off. Gu Fei sent a sad message to the Sword Demon. "This is too much. I might not be able to get out. I've also used up all my teleportation scrolls." "I think they're the ones who've gone too far," the Sword Demon replied. "What's wrong?" "This pile of building blocks is a little too dangerous," the Sword Demon said. Oh, Gu Fei was in the mountain. At this time, all the players watching from the outside could see that this thing that had been built by raining the 4 seas and the system was a pile of tofu. What? It's going to collapse? After listening to the Sword Demon's description, Gu Fei carefully observed from the inside. Sure enough, he found that some of the boulders were really shaky. If one of the boulders was hit, this tofu prison would definitely collapse. All the players could see this, so how could reigning the Four Seas people not know? But this was also what Reflection Years was after. At this time, it seemed that it was about time and he had already ordered his troops to retreat. Next, he was waiting for this tofu prison to collapse, and then the shameless scum in his heart, Qianli, would be buried alive in a drunken stupor. But man proposes, God disposes. This system really didn't give Reflection Years any face. Just as he gave the order to retreat, a blind boulder flew over and hit a very fragile place. In fact, if one really wanted to blame the system, it would be a little unfair. This was because where the boulders hit, to a certain extent, was controlled by the players of reigning the Four Seas. Every boulder was not thrown randomly, but towards a player of reigning the Four Seas. In the end, Reflection Years' considerations were not thorough enough. If he had taken this into consideration, he could have made full use of the position of his own people, and actually let the system send the boulders to where they wanted. At this time, when they were retreating, they should not have cared about their own convenience and lured the boulders to such a fragile place. This was an oversight on the part of the commander. As a result, he wasn't the only one to make such a mistake. 3 boulders fell from the sky and struck the weakest parts of the ground. The reigning seas players, who were scrambling to escape, suddenly felt the ground beneath their feet shake violently. The ground, which had always been stable, began to shift. When they looked down, there was no ground at all. Most of the players were standing on the boulders. The 3 collisions just now had caused 3 boulders to shift, causing the higher boulders to lose their support and tumble down, crashing into the boulders below, shifting again and losing their support. It was like a domino effect, but this time, there were more directions to the fall, and the force was transmitted in all directions. The rumbling sounds never stopped. Boulders rolled down and suddenly fell. The pyramid, that was originally piled high, suddenly began to collapse. How could the players who were still standing on it maintain their balance? Every one of them fell in all directions. Some of the boulders that rolled down from higher places gained momentum as they rolled, and in the blink of an eye, they were already bouncing towards the periphery. The players of Reigning the Seas were like bowling pins, waiting for the giant bowling boulder to jump over and crush them to smithereens. Fuck, I'm so fucking unlucky. A boulder flipped over where Reflection Years was standing. He grumbled as he dodged, not realizing that he had overlooked something. He just thought that he was too unlucky. The collapse of the giant stone pyramid raised the dust on the ground. The system was also ruthless. The players on top of the tower were already in such a state, but they were still seriously throwing boulders at the enemy. As more boulders were added to the boulders, the dust rose into the air, covering up the players' miserable state. Outsiders didn't know, but Sworn Sword was constantly receiving news of players being crushed to death and resurrected in the camp. In the blink of an eye, 28 players had died, and the number was still rising. In this kind of disaster, the players really had no way of fighting back. The players in the periphery had already begun to retreat spontaneously, and Reigning Seas was in a mess. Reflection Years couldn't care less. He only had one thought in his mind. Since things have already come to this, that shameless and despicable Qianli should be dead, right? As he thought about it, he saw a blurry figure flying through the dust at the sight of the collapse. Reflection Years immediately had an ominous feeling in his heart as he stared at the figure. The figure happened to be moving in his direction. It looked wobbly, and Reflection Years' heart swayed along with it. Finally, he saw a figure coming out of the dust. The reflection of time spat out a mouthful of blood 3 meters away. The ominous premonition came true. It was really the 1,000 miles drunk that couldn't be killed no matter what. Gu Fei used teleportation to avoid the first moment of the collapse. Then, with his insane body coordination and balance, he jumped out of the rolling and falling boulders. How could Reflection Years not vomit blood in the face of this situation? Is this still a human? Reflection Years felt sorrow in his heart as he looked at Gu Fei, who was making incredible jumps. This was indeed not something a human could do. Gu Fei had also performed beyond his level. He jumped from the moving boulders without stopping at all. After jumping for a period of time, Gu Fei's balance had been completely destroyed. This time he didn't have enough strength to jump, and he couldn't step on the target he was looking at. Reflection Year's spirit was suddenly lifted. If he fell directly to the ground, he would immediately be covered by a mess of rolling boulders. In the end, he couldn't escape death. Reflection Years clenched his fists excitedly. Unexpectedly, at this moment, after a boulder fell, a figure flashed in the air behind him. The figure stretched out its arms and floated over to hug Gu Fei. The two of them swayed and trembled in the air, but in the end they didn't fall. Fuck! Reflection Years roared angrily. He didn't know what this thing was, but it could fly. What kind of game was this? Gu Fei saw that he was about to fall. In his panic, he didn't have the time to sense the murderous aura. He only reacted when the person hugged him. He turned around and saw that it was none other than Strange Eye. Gu Fei was a righteous young man. It was only natural that he felt uncomfortable being hugged by a woman like that. He instinctively struggled. Strange Eye was just a sorcerer. How much strength could he have? He had used a lot of strength equipment to barely hold Gu Fei in the air. However, ever since he hugged Gu Fei, the mana consumption of the flight spell began to increase. Gu Fei continued to move, and the two of them started to sink. Their mana dropped by a large amount. Don't move. Strange Eye panicked. If they continued to fall, the two of them would be finished. Put me down. Gu Fei also realized the problem. He didn't dare to move again, but he still said in embarrassment, "You're quite old-fashioned." Strange Eye could see that Gu Fei was uncomfortable. Gu Fei was helpless. She was here to save him, not to tease him. What else could he say? Strange Eye had used the flight spell with Yin Xiaozhu before, so he had some experience. After Gu Fei stopped moving, he was able to control himself. However, his mana was running out quickly, and he had to find a place to land. Reflection Years finally reacted after a while. He knocked an arrow and shot at the two of them. The arrow hit Strange Eye's shoulder. The girl's arm trembled, and she almost dropped Gu Fei, but she gritted her teeth and held on. Reflection Time called for reinforcements in the guild, but everyone had become refugees hiding from the natural disaster. No one paid any attention to him. Reflection Time wanted to cry, but no tears came out. This was such a good opportunity. If he had mobilized the arrow formation and fired a volley of arrows at the sky, the two of them would have died before they even hit the ground. No one paid attention to his orders. Reflection Years had no choice but to risk his life. He shot another arrow at the sky. Gu Fei saw where the arrow was coming from. He wanted to block it, but he knew that such a big move would cause more trouble for Strange Eye. Time's reflection was also cunning. From the way they fought, it was obvious that the woman was the reason they were able to fly. As long as they killed her, Gu Fei would naturally fall and be buried by the giant rocks. Hence, the arrow was aimed at Strange Pupil. Although Strange Eye was one of the 5 rookies, no matter how strong a mage was, their defense and HP were only SOSO. Strange Eye wasn't an exception. He took 2 arrows in a row, and his HP dropped by half. Reflection Years wasn't someone who only knew how to come up with ideas. He was also an expert on the archer leaderboard. His equipment was also very strong, and he wasn't any weaker than the 5 rookies. "I'll drop me on the count of 3, Gu Fei said. "Then I've come for nothing." Strange Eye wasn't happy. "You'll only drop me on the count of 3. This is obviously a tactic." 1, Gu Fei said. 2. Gu Fei counted. Strange Eye prepared himself as he flew. Gu Fei was silent. "What about 3? Strange Eye asked. 1 and 2 were over. He paused for too long, and Strange Eye took 2 more arrows. "All right, 3. Gu Fei saw Reflection Years shoot another arrow and finally counted to 3. The moment Strange Eye let go, the arrow was right in front of him. He looked at his low HP and wondered if it was going to be a tragedy. But Gu Fei, who was still in the air, slashed with his sword and knocked the arrow away. Then he fell to the ground. Reflection Years was overjoyed. He didn't know that Gu Fei had actually let go of Strange Eye himself. In his eyes, Strange Eye couldn't take the arrow, and Gu Fei had no choice but to block it. His movements were too big, and Strange Eye couldn't hold on anymore, and he fell. Below Gu Fei was a jumping boulder. If he fell, he would be dead. But Gu Fei had a plan when he told Strange Eye to let go of him. His teleportation was already off cooldown. Teleportation. Before Gu Fei could land, he teleported 6 meters forward and stepped on a flying boulder. This time, Gu Fei didn't jump in another direction, because he could see clearly that the boulder was going in the direction he wanted it to go. 1, 2, 3. He was waiting for this mount. Reflection Years wanted to shoot another arrow to kill Strange Eye, but Gu Fei, who had just landed, teleported away. Time's reflection immediately panicked. As he searched for Gu Fei, he noticed a boulder hurtling towards him. He hurriedly dodged to the side. Time had dodged the giant boulder reflection, but as he drew his bow and darted out from the side, he looked around for traces of Gu Fei. Just as he was about to take aim, he saw a figure flying out from behind the fallen boulder. Gu Fei stomped down on the reflection of Time's head with both of his feet. The reflection of Time fell to the ground. Gu Fei had made such a difficult move to dispel the qi in his body, but he didn't manage to keep his footing. Stepping on the reflection of Time's face, he staggered and fell to the ground as well. However, he had already slashed at the reflection of Time with his sword. Reflection Years saw that there were his brothers around him, but they were all running away in a hurry. No one even looked at him. He felt extremely sad. Gu Fei got up and was about to kill Reflection Years when Strange Eye's voice came from above. "Be careful." Gu Fei looked up and saw a huge boulder flying towards him. Gu Fei quickly dodged it. Reflection Years was still lying on the ground. When he turned his head and saw the boulder, he was already in close contact with it. "Run!" Strange Eye shouted at Gu Fei. "Got it." Gu Fei turned around and ran, but he wasn't as focused as his brothers. He even picked someone to bully. Strange Eye didn't have Gu Fei as a burden. She had enough mana to fly for a while longer, so she wasn't worried. One of them was in the air, and the other was on the ground. Behind them were the rolling boulders, and just like that, they escaped from the disaster site. On the other hand, Reigning Four Seas had suffered heavy losses. Although he had been running, how many players could match Gu Fei's movement speed? The catapult's boulders had an effective range, but the boulders rolling around the collapsed area didn't have an effective range. As long as the momentum remained, the boulders would continue to roll, crushing countless unhindered players to death. In the end, even the spectators who were standing too close to the boulders were affected by the impact. Gu Fei turned around to look. It was a tragic sight. Strange Eye had used up all his mana, and he slowly descended from the sky. "You appeared just in time," Gu Fei said. "I just came to take a look. I didn't think I would actually be able to save you," Strange Eye said. "Where's Sword Demon?" "He's looking for the Sword of No Oath with Xiao Zhu," Strange Eye said. "Oh, then go help him," Gu Fei said. The two of them turned around and left, weaving through the chaotic crowd of players. At this time, there were several pairs of eyes staring at the two. Because the situation was too chaotic, even if Gu Fei noticed it, he wouldn't care too much. "Are you going to look for the Sword of No Oath? Are you worried for him?" Han Family Young Master asked Gu Xiaoshang. Gu Xiaoshang pursed his lips. "My feelings are a bit complicated." Chapter 691. Tell everyone to get ready. It's time to pull in the net, Han Family Young Master said. Gu Xiaoshang nodded and passed down the order in the team channel. "You can remind Unsworn Sword," Han Family Young Master said. Gu Xiaoshang smiled. "I've already reminded him." Unsworn Sword was about to face a disaster, but he was feeling pretty good inside. It was all because of Gu Xiaoshang's caring message. The brothers around Unsworn Sword saw that Unsworn Sword could still have such a natural smile at a time like this. They were all very impressed. Unhindered Four Seas was already in a mess. No one's words were effective. Gu Fei had killed less than 100 people, but the giant stone pyramid had collapsed and rolled in all directions. Unhindered Four Seas had lost a third of its troops. But the disaster wasn't over yet. Physics told us that the greater the mass, the greater the inertia. The giant stones were still rolling happily at this time. Unsworn Retreat. Someone beside Unsworn Sword called out to him. They were all his close friends. Qianli's drunk is about to appear. Unsworn Sword was overjoyed after hearing Gu Xiaoshang's message. He finally knew how to take Qianli's drunk seriously. "Oh, where did you hear that from?" Everyone began to look around cautiously. Xiaoshang said it. Unsworn Sword couldn't help but smile at the mention of this name. These close friends naturally knew of Unsworn Sword's problem. Only now did they realize why Unsworn Sword had been able to laugh earlier. Everyone's forehead was covered in sweat. No wonder he was smiling so ambiguously. No matter what, let's get out of here first. Someone said. Unsworn Sword's position wasn't too close to the battlefield. So even though the boulders had affected the spectators, it hadn't reached him yet. But looking at how the boulders were flowing, it was only a matter of time before they reached him. The players everywhere were retreating. Let's go. Unsworn Sword focused his mind and stopped thinking about Gu Xiaoshang. He led a few others to retreat. Looking at his brothers running around in panic, Unsworn Sword felt his heart ache. He wanted to say something to calm everyone down, but he didn't know what to say. As the saying goes, a defeated army is like a toppling mountain. How could a few words clean up this mess? Just as Unsworn Sword was at his wit's end, a brother beside him suddenly shouted, "There's a stealth assassin!" As he said that, a circle of people quickly gathered around Sword without Oathless. At the same time, a black silhouette flashed in front of them, and a certain person in the middle was instantly turned into white light. Sword without Oathless was left vulnerable, and the black silhouette did not show any mercy, quickly sweeping past him. However, it was clear that the previous person's sacrifice had already resolved most of the damage. Sword without Oathless was knocked to the ground, but he did not die. A cleric immediately cast a healing spell on Unsworn Sword. In terms of a balanced multi-class team, the team surrounding Unsworn Sword was undoubtedly the most elite team in Reigning 4Cs. Anti-Stealth predicted Sword Demon's sneak attack, and quickly moved to protect Sword of No Oath. If it wasn't for Sword Demon's Misty Strike being too strong at the moment, no one would have been sacrificed. However, the sacrifice of one person did not affect their emotions too much. Everyone's eyes were already focused on the Sword Demon. The previous anti-stealth hurriedly reminded again. Attention, there's one more. For o'clock. Clock positioning. The biggest advantage of this positioning was that the direction of 12 o'clock varied from person to person. At this time, although Sword Demon also knew clock positioning, and at the same time heard the other person pointing at 4 o'clock, he could not find this 4 o'clock, because he did not know how Sword without Oathless and the others were used to pointing at 12 o'clock. At this time, the opponent's mage had already thrown an area of effect spell in the 4 o'clock direction. Before the fire could ignite, another figure flashed out. At this time, Yin Xiaozhu could only give up on stealth, and at the same time, she looked a little shocked. It was not that she had not seen anti-stealth skills before, but it was the first time she had seen one that could accurately determine the position. "Brother Sword Demon, why bother?" Sword without Oathless said with a bitter face. Of course, Sword Demon did not look like he had a deep hatred for Sword without Oathless. He took off his mask and smiled at Sword without Oathless. "It's all part of the game's mission content. Guild leader without Oathless, please don't take it to heart." "I know, but we're all good friends. It's really a little embarrassing to meet at this time." Sword without Oathless played the emotional card. However, Sword Demon was not moved at all. Instead, he seriously reminded Sword without Oathless, "Guild leader without Oathless, don't be soft-hearted. If you do, we'll have an unfair advantage." "Brother Sword Demon, Guild leader without Oathless." Sword Demon interrupted Sword without Oathless words, but his tone was very sincere. "If you continue, my skill just now will be off cooldown." After all, Sword Demon was a kind person. If Sword without Oathless really wanted to bribe him with some benefits, he would not be moved at all. However, playing the emotional card was quite poking at Sword Demon's weakness. Originally, he wanted to use this opportunity to chat with each other, and take the opportunity to get Misty Ambush off cooldown, but now he directly revealed this to Sword without Oathless. At the same time, he also expressed his intention to carry out the mission to the end. Sword without Oathless also admired Sword Demon's character. He nodded and said, "Then I'll have to offend you." As for Sword Demon, they were not very afraid. Although the ghostly skill just now was terrifying, at this time, Sword Demon's self-destruction was on cooldown. Everyone hurriedly rushed toward him. That skill was too strong, and everyone knew that they could not dodge it. Therefore, the best plan was to kill Sword Demon before his cooldown ended. Everyone rushed forward, but Sword Demon turned around and ran. With his movement speed, no one could catch up to him in an instant except for teleportation. Sword Without Oathless and his team chased after him for a few steps, and tears streamed down their faces. Sword Demon was a kind person, but this way of fighting was not kind at all. Once he started running, it would take some time to catch up. At that time, his skill would be off cooldown, and he would turn around and attack. Whoever rushed in front would die first. Although Sword Without Oathless' team was elite, they did not have many people. It was impossible for them to surround him. At this time they shouted a few times in the channel, but there was no response at all. Everyone was too busy to look at the guild channel. Fengxing and Reflection Years, the core members of the guild, were the only ones who cared about the important matters of the guild. When they saw Sword Without Oathless shouting, they immediately sent a message. "What's the situation? We've encountered Sword Demon. This guy wants to kite us all to death. Hurry and bring people to help. Coordinates XXX. Sword Without Oathless said quickly. Reflection Years had just died alone and returned to the camp, but there were also many players from Reigning who had died. He was reorganizing the team and calming them down. Fengxing, on the other hand, was not dead. He was also leading a small team to avoid the disaster. At this time, when he received the message from Sword Without Oathless, he immediately raised his arm and shouted, "The enemy has appeared. Everyone follow me." Sword Without Oathless, Reflection Years, and Fengxing were the three core members of Reigning. These three people's biggest characteristics were acting cool, scheming, and fighting. And as the core, the three of them naturally had a familiar team around them. Whether it was leveling, quests, or PvP, they would often be together. And the style of these teams was different because of the characteristics of the leader. Sword Without Oathless was the guild leader, so it was more convenient for him to occupy the guild's resources. With smooth sailing, he easily gathered the elite experts of the guild around him. In addition to his habit of acting cool, his team was the most arrogant. Of course, they deserved to be arrogant. After that, the people that Reflection Years brought were all influenced by him. Every one of them was a king of ideas. Whether or not they could come up with a good plan was not a question. In any case, they were very imaginative. As for Fengxing, he gathered a group of bandits who loved PvP. In terms of game data, Sword Without Oathless' team was indeed the most elite, and their teamwork was also very good. If you asked them to fight a boss or something in the system, they were indeed the strongest. But when it came to PvP, which was ever-changing, even Sword Without Oathless' team had to be a bit afraid of Fengxing's team. At this time, when he heard that Fengxing was about to arrive with his team, and was not far away, Sword Without Oathless breathed a sigh of relief, and said to the people around him, "Fengxing is coming. Everyone do your best. If you really can't do it, just do your best to drag it out." The meaning behind Sword Without Oathless' words was very clear to everyone. "If you really can't do it, you guys can help me as a meat shield." Everyone nodded. They were not unhappy with this meaning. After all, they were very close to Sword Without Oathless. Sword Without Oathless was not afraid of death. The main thing was that he had to bear the mission of being assassinated. Who knew if his death in this mission would cause great damage to the guild? If this was a private matter between Sword Demon or Qianli, Sword Without Oathless would definitely come out and propose a one-on-one fight. If he was killed by Qianli in a one-on-one fight, it would not be embarrassing at all. Instead, if he dared to take the initiative to challenge Qianli in a one-on-one fight, it would be worth promoting. As Sword Demon ran, he paid attention to the positions of Sword Without Oathless and the others. Waiting for the cooldown of Misty Strike? This was indeed a possibility, but the Sword Ghost's fighting style wouldn't be so simple. Killing power was only one of the uses of a powerful skill. The existence of such a skill was a threat to the enemy, and it was a form of restraint. For example, no matter how Sword Without Oathless and the others ran, there would be someone covering between Sword Demon and Sword Without Oathless. This was the credit of Misty Strike. Otherwise, as a warrior, Sword Without Oathless would not have such a big concern for assassins. Sword Demon led them in 2 circles, and found that their positions were not messed up at all. Reigning's most elite team, in a sense, could also be said to be the most elite in Cloud City. It would be too difficult to fight this team alone. If not for Misty Strike, he probably would not have a chance at all. Sword Demon thought about it, but he could not find an opportunity to make a move. Misty Strike's cooldown was actually over, but Sword Demon did not use it immediately. Firstly, he did not want the opponent to grasp the cooldown of this skill. Secondly, no matter how strong the skill was, he had to find an opportunity to use it. If he rushed over and killed one person, then stopped in the middle of the opponent's encirclement, was that not suicide? As the 2 sides chased each other, Yin Xiaozhu seemed to have been forgotten, standing alone on the side. Sword Without Oathless and the others did not know her, but they did not know that she was on the thief leaderboard. They habitually looked down on her just because she was a girl. This was obviously not the first time Yin Xiaozhu had experienced this kind of treatment. She was very depressed at the thought of it, and angrily thought about how to teach these guys a lesson. As the others ran, Yin Xiaozhu suddenly dashed forward. Such an action was too rash in the eyes of the experienced Sword Demon. He did not believe that Sword Without Oathless and the others had really forgotten about this girl. So he quickly shouted, "Be careful. Watch me." Yin Xiaozhu was quite pleased with herself, but Unsworn Sword and the others were indeed prepared. When they saw the girl coming over, they suddenly slowed down their pace and charged in the opposite direction. There were people on both sides, and before Yin Xiaozhu could figure out what was going on, she found herself surrounded in the middle. No one spoke to her at all. The sorcerer immediately threw out an area of effect spell. Yin Xiaozhu hurriedly tried to dodge, but the people surrounding her maintained the same size circle, moving in a practiced manner. Immediately, someone blocked her path of retreat. It was too late for Yin Xiaozhu to change direction, so she could only rush forward and fight. When she got close, she waved her hand, and a cloud of green powder appeared. Sword Without Oathless and the others had never seen this kind of attack before, so they were not prepared at all. The person took it head-on, and his vision immediately turned black. He immediately reported his current situation to the others. "I can't see. Blind? It's Yin Xiaozhu?" Someone was shocked. The intelligence network of reigning forces had its fair share of tricks up its sleeves. They paid more attention to the information of the experts in the game. They wanted to rope them in, but they also treated them as potential enemies. Even though they did not know Yin Xiaozhu personally, they knew that this female thief had a skill that no one knew yet: blind. It was a simulation game after all. With blind, they would really be unable to see anything. Wouldn't they be at the mercy of others? This skill could be said to be very practical, and many thief players were extremely envious. Although Yin Xiaozhu had blinded one person, because of the person's position, she was unable to rush out of the small circle in time, and was hit by the area of effect spell that the mage had thrown. From this, it could be seen that the small team of players from Sword Without Oathless had excellent coordination and skill. The circle they had formed was just right for the area of effect spell, and the spell that the mage had thrown did not miss at all. Yin Xiaozhu, who was in the circle, was burned, but the others brushed past them, and were not damaged at all. However, one spell was not enough for Yin Xiaozhu to die immediately. Taking advantage of the fact that the person in front of her could not see, she nimbly went around him. Then, she heard the sound of wind behind her. An archer's arrow had already caught up to her. Yin Xiaozhu was not Gu Fei, so she did not have the ability to determine the location of sound, nor did she have such quick reflexes. When she heard the sound, she instinctively wanted to dodge, but she did not manage to dodge it completely. The arrow hit her in the shoulder, causing her to stagger. It was clear how strong the damage was. At this time, Sword Without Oathless had temporarily ignored Sword Demon, and prepared to take down Yin Xiaozhu. Sword Demon had no choice but to act at this time. A misty strike rushed over, and even the strongest player had no way of dealing with this skill. One person was instantly killed. Sword Demon directly broke into the circle of Sword Without Oathless and pounced on Sword Without Oathless. This method of besieging way to rescue Zhao forced the other party into a corner. They could only abandon Yin Xiaozhu and turn back to attack Sword Demon. Sword Demon already knew that once he entered the circle, it would not be so easy for him to get out. As expected, the other party quickly formed an effective small encirclement. Even Sword without Oathless personally attacked. Everyone reminded him to be careful. And Sword without Oathless smiled coolly. The skills that you used just now have a cooldown. Isn't that right, brother Sword Demon? This boss's pretentiousness was back. Sword Demon really did not train for nothing. Now that he was fighting one against many, he was still able to fight well. It was just that with so many people surrounding him, he really did not have the ability to dodge all of them. He could only avoid them and try his best to stall for time, looking for an opportunity to escape. Sword Demon was not someone who would give up once he entered a dangerous situation. When Yen Xiaozhu saw that Sword Demon was surrounded, she hurriedly turned back to rescue him. Sword without Oathless randomly picked a player to fight the enemy. Yen Xiaozhu's ranking was high, but other than a blind, there was nothing special about it. Although her equipment was good, this expert who could dominate the world was not that bad either. In terms of PK skills, both of them were players, and they were equally matched. Once they started fighting, the victor would not be decided in a short period of time. Sword without Oathless team worked closely together, and there was no gap for him to escape. Sword Demon carefully dodged the attacks, carefully holding on until Misty Ambush's cooldown was over. Sword without Oathless was now in front of him, and he could give him a fatal blow. Sword Demon quietly calculated. But Sword without Oathless might be pretentious, but he was not stupid. After standing up for a few minutes, he immediately retreated and shouted at the guy who was fighting Yen Xiaozhu, Come, let me take your place." Sword Demon saw that his plan was not going to go as he wished, and could only sigh. One against many, facing such an expert, his strength was still not fully developed. Just as he was feeling helpless, Gu Fei's voice rang in his ears. It was heartfelt anxiety. "Sword Demon, leave a few for me." Unsworn Sword had just left the crowd to challenge Yen Xiaozhu to a duel, but when he heard the voice, he turned around and saw Gu Fei charging over from the crowd. Unsworn Sword could not help but shiver, and very nimbly returned to the group. This time he did not dare to pretend anymore, and hurriedly ordered, "Quick, gather up and block." At the same time he sent a message to Feng Xing Dam, "Why isn't he here yet? Qianli is already here." Feng Xing was also quite depressed. "Can we compare to his speed? Hurry." Sword without Oathless was anxious, very anxious. Gu Fei had already rolled up his sleeves. He held his sword and rushed over asking, "Only this many?" The people surrounding Sword Demon had already retreated and surrounded Sword without Oathless. Sword Demon wiped his sweat. "For a normal person this is enough." Gu Fei smiled and took a step forward. Sword without Oathless team couldn't help but take a step back. Gu Fei took out a banana, peeled it and ate it. Sword without Oathless and the others suspected that this was some big move, and stared at Gu Fei warily. On the other side, Yen Xiaozhu was anxious, and angrily ran over. "Hurry up, why are you eating a banana?" "To replenish magic power," Gu Fei said. Everyone fainted, and Sword without Oathless and the others were going crazy. They were so nervous that they forgot that eating a banana was so simple to replenish magic power. Actually, wasn't Yen Xiaozhu the same? She also regarded eating bananas as a very incongruous thing with the current situation. It was because Gu Fei was eating bananas too arrogantly. Chapter 692. Don't just stand there. Unsworn Sword struck out with his left hand and his right fist, hitting the archer and mage to his left and right. The archer shivered and an arrow flew into the sky, while the mage stumbled and stabbed his staff into the ground. The two of them turned around angrily. "What are you doing?" The spell was interrupted. The mage said, "The arrow flew into the sky." The archer said, "Oh, you two aren't stupid. If you're going to make a move, at least say something." Unsworn Sword had made a mistake. He was the one complaining first. "Do you know what a sneak attack is?" The two of them spat on Unsworn Sword's face. They were all close friends. They had no respect for their guild leader. "Of course not. I'm a warrior. What's a sneak attack?" Unsworn Sword was still pretending. The two in front of him resisted the urge to dodge, exposing Unsworn Sword to the tip of Gu Fei's sword. Unsworn Sword glanced at his side. Including himself, there were 9 people. Although none of them were mediocre, based on their understanding of Qianli's drunkard, they knew that the difference between an expert and a noob to Qianli's drunkard was just a matter of 1 or 2 strikes. There was no difference in essence. Qianli's drunkard was such a powerful person, but they couldn't bring him into a meeting. Although they were friends now, they had privately thought of countermeasures against him. Unfortunately, they couldn't come up with a solution. Otherwise, why would they need to huddle together like a meatball? The method that Unsworn Sword and the others thought of to deal with Qianli's drunkard was to slowly wear him down with numbers. Right now they really didn't have enough people. The mages and archers were thrown into confusion by Unsworn Sword. The two of them were quite cunning. While spitting saliva at Unsworn Sword, they suddenly launched another sneak attack at Gu Fei. It was a sneak attack. Gu Fei tossed the banana peel over. He followed closely behind, dodging left and right. The archer's arrow and the mage's chain fireball missed. Gu Fei's sword was already raised, but he hadn't cast a spell yet. Everyone could see the bright red glow of fire from the tip of his sword. "Pippi, hold on!" Unsworn Sword roared. The warrior in front of him flipped his hand, and a huge shield suddenly appeared in his hand, blocking the incoming sword strike from Gu Fei. Gu Fei was startled. He recognized this shield. It was the spirit-imprisoning shield of the 3 warriors who had been with Silvermoon. Its defense was unbelievably strong. Any attack that landed on this shield would be a waste of time, especially when the opponent had replenishment. Gu Fei looked up. The enemy's holy priest and paladin were ready, so Gu Fei didn't waste any time. He switched positions and looked for another place to attack. As a result, another spirit-imprisoning shield appeared. There were originally 3 shields, and 3 players had them. Back when Silvermoon fell for the trap and ran away, Unsworn Sword took the opportunity to summon them into reigning the 4 seas. Although the 3 of them were not members of Unsworn Sword's close combat team, when Unsworn Sword was in dire need of protection, the 3 of them were naturally transferred to his side. These people had a bit of a hobby of hiding things. They liked to keep things as a secret weapon or a final trump card. These 3 guys started fighting with their swords, hoping to surprise their opponent with the spirit-imprisoning shield when they needed to defend. But Sword Demon's first misty ambush was too sudden. They didn't have time to take out the shield, and one of them died. The second time, Sword Demon took out the shield, but he didn't have time to cover the target of Sword Demon's attack, so he couldn't save him. Unsworn Sword endured both times. After all, the first time was enough to protect him, and the second time he didn't take any damage. This third time, Gu Fei's sword was right in front of them. Unsworn Sword was afraid that these 2 guys didn't know the severity of the situation, so he took the initiative to warn them. The full name of the warrior called Pippi by Unsworn Sword was Sheepskin. Influenced by children's literature and anime, he originally wanted to call himself Pippi Lu, but it was a registered name, so he couldn't use it casually. He then wanted to call himself Pleasant Goat, but it was already taken by someone else. He could only use his imagination and experiment with Pippi Goat, Lu Goat, and so on. Finally, he found an ID that wasn't taken by someone else. When Gu Fei saw that it was another spectral imprisoning shield, he recalled that there were 3 sides to this shield. At this time, Sword Without Oath did not have many people on his side. With 3 people standing in 3 different directions, it would not be difficult for them to protect Sword Without Oath. Back then, Silvermoon had done this as well. Gu Fei was quite helpless. He suddenly jumped back a few steps and used an area of effect spell that he didn't like to use in PvP. Flaming Tree 1000 Layers Flames. Gu Fei waved his sword. Previously, when he used this skill, Silvermoon and the others had squeezed onto the shield. But today, Unsworn Sword's group had more people than Silvermoon's group, so there were bound to be some that slipped through. Sure enough, Sheepskin and the other warrior hurriedly threw their shields to the ground and hopped onto them like skateboards. Unsworn Sword was the first to be rescued by them. The others also tried their best to get to the top. Only a thief and an archer with some speed were able to use their own speed to dodge out of the circle. Gu Fei laughed. "It's fake." Everyone looked down. As expected, there was no fire. This was one of the most despised tricks of mages, pretending to chant. Mages often use this trick in PvP to mislead their opponents. Currently, players could only rely on their own PvP experience to judge, which was very annoying. Especially when faced with Gu Fei's 1 in a million damage, they had to use a chicken feather as an arrow, but they didn't dare to take the risk. As a result, Gu Fei pretended to chant. It didn't seem very realistic, but these people were already hiding in their Noah's Ark in a panic. Teleport. This time, Gu Fei really did chant. In a flash, he was already in front of the shield. The spirit imprisoning shield was still on the ground, so how could he grab it so quickly? Gu Fei didn't hold back. He twisted his body and slashed twice with dual flame flash, instantly killing 3 people in the front row. There were still 4 people squeezed in the back, and they hurriedly retreated. In the end, both of their shields were thrown to the ground. Shield, shield. Unsworn Sword hurriedly shouted. This was one of the best pieces of equipment in their guild. He didn't want to lose it just like that. As he shouted, he looked at Gu Fei and said, "Brother Qianli, this is a quest. If the equipment drops, don't steal it, okay?" "No, I'll help you step on it," Gu Fei said. Don't. If you let us pick it up, the system will refresh soon." Unsworn Sword's heart ached. "That won't do. If I pick it up, you guys will block my attacks." Gu Fei wasn't that stupid. Before Unsworn Sword could say anything, Sheepskin had already rushed forward. Sometimes, equipment was more important than levels. Moreover, dying here wouldn't be a loss at all. The other shield warrior had just been killed by Gu Fei. Sheepskin desperately wanted to save the 2 shields, but he still had a bit of selfishness in his heart. The 3 of them hadn't joined unhindered for long. Because of these 3 shields, the 3 knew that as long as they had these 3 shields, they would be welcome no matter where they went. At this moment, the shields fell to the ground. Unsworn Sword was also quite anxious. However, if Unsworn Sword picked them up, it was hard to say whether or not he would return them to the 3 of them. Sheepskin clearly didn't have much confidence in Unsworn Sword's character. At this moment, he wanted to personally pick up his shields. Of course, Gu Fei wouldn't be merciful. He slashed at Sheepskin's head. Sheepskin really was tough. He ignored Unsworn Sword and focused on retrieving the shields. The shields were being stepped on by Gu Fei, but how much strength could he exert? Although Sheepskin was only a heavy-armored warrior, he still had enough strength to compete with Gu Fei. With a swing of his shield, he actually knocked Gu Fei off his feet. "Chance!" Unsworn Sword shouted. Accompanying his shout was a ray of rainbow-like light. Gu Fei's dual flame flash was already ready. As he flipped, he slashed at Sheepskin's head. However, as a heavy-armored warrior, his HP was extremely high. Although Sheepskin didn't have the time to use his shield, he still managed to block the slash. Just as he was about to retreat, Sword Demon arrived. Under the loud warning of Unsworn Sword and the others, Sheepskin was stabbed from behind by Sword Demon and turned into white light. After reviving in the camp, Sheepskin looked at his hands. Seeing that the spirit imprisoning shield was still there, he let out a long sigh. In his heart, Unsworn Sword's life and death couldn't compare to that shield. Sword Demon, keep this shield first. The battle was still ongoing. Gu Fei turned around and slashed at Sheepskin. He didn't even flip over. With his other hand on the ground, he did a backflip and stood steadily. He said to Sword Demon in a relaxed manner. Sword Demon didn't hesitate, and put the shield into his pocket. Unsworn Sword's face was a little pale. "Boss Sword Demon. I'll return it when it's over." Sword Demon also said the same thing. 2 heavy-armored warriors were dead. Including him, Unsworn Sword now had 5 people. 1 warrior, 1 thief, 1 archer, 1 knight, and 1 priest. Numbers were no longer an advantage, not to mention an expert like Gu Fei on their side. Where are they? Why aren't they here yet? Unsworn Sword looked at Gu Fei's cold sword, and was about to go crazy. "I've already asked the faster ones to go first," Fengxing said helplessly. In order to stall for time, Unsworn Sword began to wrangle with Gu Fei and Sword Demon. He continued on the topic of the shield. "Do you 2 know the origin of this shield?" "I don't know. What is it?" Gu Fei said as he picked up an apple. We still have to talk about an old friend of ours, Silvermoon. Actually, I'm not that familiar with him, but I heard that you guys have dealt with Silvermoon many times, right? Unsworn Sword said. Yes, I heard that he's left the game now. Gu Fei said. Kacha. Really? What's going on? Unsworn Sword was happy that the conversation was going so smoothly. The priest next to him poked him. Unsworn, he's eating an apple. Eating an apple? An apple is good. It's sweet. You can eat it if you want. Don't tell me you don't have one? I don't. Warriors don't eat apples. Apple, Apple. Fuck. Unsworn Sword reacted. Gu Fei had used up all his mana, and was replenishing it again. You're really hopeless. As someone spoke, a few arrows shot towards Gu Fei. The sky and ground were also set ablaze. Gu Fei hurriedly dodged with the apple in his mouth. Sword Demon also followed closely behind him. Unsworn Sword looked towards the direction of the voice. He was extremely excited. Little Shang. Little Shang glanced at him and shook his head. Hurry up and leave. Not only did Unsworn Sword not leave, he even excitedly bounced towards Little Shang. He shouted, Why are you here? Don't go that way. Little Shang roared. Unsworn Sword froze and stood in place. In the end, all the spells in the world had already been set ablaze. In a real battle, if the young master of the Han family gave the order to Gu Xiaoshang, and then Gu Xiaoshang would be the one to transmit the order, that would be a beat slower. Therefore, Gu Xiaoshang had already given the order to listen to the young master of the Han family. At this time, the Han family young master calmly commanded the sorcerers and archers to attack the coordinates he had pointed out. He had already reminded them beforehand that regardless of whether the coordinates had a target or not, they just had to do as he said. Team 1 XXX. Team 2 XXX. Team B XXX. This was the format of the order. It jumped in the team channel. Team 1, Team 2, Team A, Team B, and so on had already been arranged beforehand. At this time, when they heard the order, they would attack the coordinates. This Unsworn Sword forgot everything when he saw Little Shang. He wanted to get close to him. Although the path he took didn't have Gu Fei or Sword Demon, it just happened to be the coordinates that the Han family young master had ordered to attack. Would the Han family young master care about his life? Of course not. Of course, the Han family young master wouldn't. What was even more pitiful was that Little Shang's subordinates wouldn't either. Unsworn Sword's feelings for Little Shang were completely one-sided. Therefore, the guild members in between the rosy clouds saw Unsworn Sword's pursuit as harassment. Although their guild leader didn't mean it that way, they really wanted to vent their guild leader's anger and eliminate this pervert. Therefore, when they saw Unsworn Sword coming at them, it was exactly what they wanted. They threw their spells to their heart's content. Some of them even secretly adjusted the angle of their spells, trying to take care of Unsworn Sword even more. Unsworn Sword didn't expect this to happen. When he heard Little Shang shout, he was stunned on the spot. He immediately became a target. He didn't miss a single attack, and was almost blasted to smithereens. What was even worse was the next order from the Han family young master. Team 1, Team 2 XXX. The people from Team 1 and Team 2 couldn't help but glance at the Han family young master. This guy actually gathered two teams to attack Unsworn Sword. He really wanted to kill Unsworn Sword. The two teams hesitated for a moment. After all, it could be said that Unsworn Sword had rashly barged into their casting coordinates. He was asking for it. However, this time it was everyone who took the initiative to cast spells on his head. The surrounding crowd's eyes were all sharp. It wouldn't be easy to explain this. In the end, while they were hesitating, Gu Fei had already charged in their direction. His target was none other than the Sword of No Oath. Only then did the two teams realize that the Han family young master had already predicted that Qianli would take this opportunity to attack Unsworn Sword. He had ordered them to throw spells at that area, not to kill Unsworn Sword. Their target was actually Qianli. Unsworn Sword could only be considered cannon fodder. Thinking of this, everyone stopped hesitating and hurriedly cast spells. However, Gu Fei had already arrived in front of Unsworn Sword. Without saying a word, he used dual flame flash. Unsworn Sword's HP fell to 0. There was no need to slash at him anymore. Just the burning effect of dual flame flash was enough to make himself combust. However, Gu Fei didn't let down his guard. He immediately followed up with a second dual flame flash. Unsworn Sword had already closed his eyes helplessly, but to his surprise, a white light suddenly flashed past his body, and Unsworn Sword's health instantly returned to full. While Unsworn Sword was still in shock, Gu Fei's second burn arrived. Even after taking this hit, he still hadn't died. This time, even Gu Fei was shocked. Unsworn Sword had been hit by a wave of AoE spells just now. Now he had taken a 720-point dual flame flash. Yet he still hadn't died. As expected of the guild leader of a major guild, he probably had equipment with magic resistance comparable to Slim Waist. The bombardment of spells directed by the Han family young master had arrived. Gu Fei thought that Unsworn Sword was a superhuman in terms of fire resistance, so he wasn't confident. He could only choose to retreat for the time being and dodge the wave of attacks. Unsworn Sword was still shocked by the instant his HP was full. That seemed to be the effect of a healing spell. That was too scary. While he was in a daze, he was once again bombarded by spells from both teams. Unsworn Sword's body was really tough. The two waves of spells didn't kill him. This time, he finally recovered and hurriedly used charge again and again, escaping from that area. But he still hadn't given up. Not only did he not return to his brother's side, he still wanted to go to Gu Xiaoshang's side. He's really too persistent. The Han family young master moved his staff away from Unsworn Sword and said to Gu Xiaoshang, while continuing to give orders in the channel. Team 4, 2 o'clock. Team 5, 12 o'clock. Team 6, 10 o'clock. This was also using the clock positioning method. The Han family young master was at the center of the clock, and his staff was pointing in the 12 o'clock direction. Unsworn Sword walked over, but he also saw the Han family young master's staff move away from him. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that monster? In an instant, he had recovered all of his HP, which had already been reduced to single digits. This recovery was even more insane than the damage of 1,000 miles drunk. As Unsworn Sword thought about this, he still placed Gu Xiaoshang as his priority. He walked over happily and asked, Xiaoshang, why are you here? He really wanted to hear Gu Xiaoshang say that he was here to save him. But if Gu Xiaoshang really said that, Unsworn Sword wouldn't be thinking too highly of himself. Gu Xiaoshang pointed at Qianli's drunk and sword demon. To deal with them. Unsworn Sword didn't hesitate to interpret this as coming for him, and was very happy. Han family young master still took the time to glance at him. Guild Master Unsworn, go back to the camp and pack up your guild. It's already a mess. Thank you. Our people will be here soon. It won't be too late to go after we defeat Qianli and Sword Demon. Seeing that it was the young master of the Han family in front of him, Unsworn Sword finally controlled his emotions and very politely said, defeat 1,000 Miles and Sword Spectre. Finally, he did not yell, kill these two brats. As he spoke, he took out a piece of bread to eat and recover his health. Han family young master shook his head. You don't have much time. 5 seconds left. What? 4. What did you say? 3. What did he say? Unsworn Sword asked Gu Xiaoshang. 2. Hey. 1. This. Before Unsworn Sword could finish his sentence, a white light flashed. Chapter 693. Unsworn Sword appeared in the camp. He was shocked and resentful. Just from the 5 seconds that Han family young master helped him count down, it was enough for him to guess that Han family young master had done something to him. Unsworn Sword quickly checked his equipment, skills level, experience, etc. It was fine. He didn't see any losses from these. Then what about the guild? Unsworn Sword hurriedly opened up the guild interface. The guild level, reputation, number of people, these were all data. There were no deductions. It must be the points. Unsworn Sword thought, City War points. There was no data showing it, so it must be negative now. Why? Unsworn Sword sent this message to Gu Xiaoshang. He was unhappy and felt wronged. This is to help you. Gu Xiaoshang said. Help me. Unsworn Sword was confused. At least you didn't die to Qianli's drunk, right? Gu Xiaoshang said. Unsworn Sword was startled. Death didn't cause any losses, so suicide became a new method of teleportation. Unsworn Sword wasn't afraid of death, but rather the failure of the quest due to his death. Now that he didn't die to Qianli's drunk, what was there to be afraid of? So that's how it is. That's right. Why didn't I think of it earlier? Unsworn Sword's sadness turned into joy as he sent a message to Gu Xiaoshang. But how did he do it? Unsworn Sword was still confused about the sudden death. I'm not sure either. Gu Xiaoshang was also confused. She also asked Han Family Young Master curiously. Han Family Young Master showed her his staff. The fake health, the instant you recover to full health, it's all an illusion. After 30 seconds, the recovered health will be deducted, so that's how it is. Gu Xiaoshang understood. However, a skill was a skill. The young master of the Han family had actually managed to accurately use the skill in the small gap between Gu Fei's dual flame flash. This kind of precise control wasn't something that just anyone could do. While he was explaining to Gu Xiaoshang, he was still giving out orders in the team channel. The orders he gave were sometimes quite baffling to the people in the rosy clouds, but after a few times, everyone could see the effect of his orders. Gu Fei and the Sword Demon were in a sorry state. They wanted to run east, but the sea of fire in the east suddenly came to greet them. If they wanted to head west, they would be met with a barrage of arrows. Even if they could dodge the arrows, their speed would be greatly reduced, and they would likely be engulfed by the sea of fire behind them. Helpless, the two of them ran towards the north. In the end, the heavy-armored soldiers stood in 2 rows, and in between, there was a row of priests, neatly forming a great wall. With such a formation, whether it was the Sword Demon's misty ambush or Gu Fei's turning flame flash, they couldn't break out of the encirclement in an instant. When they wanted to turn back, the area that the mages had spread out had already expanded, with the momentum of an avalanche. This kind of class composition is the most suitable to deal with the two of them, Han Family Young Master said to Gu Xiaoshang with a smile. Gu Xiaoshang had chosen the elites of the guild. Han Family Young Master didn't say anything at first, but he still reorganized the team later on. Mages, marksmen, heavy-armored soldiers, and priests became the main composition of this team. Thieves were completely reduced to scouts. When the battle started, Han Family Young Master didn't give them any instructions at all. Berserk warriors, a class that was usually at the forefront of attacks, were actually thrown to the back by Han Family Young Master. The knights were even worse off. Han Family Young Master's order was to do whatever. This order was very sad. It basically said that it didn't matter if they were there or not. As for Grandmasters of Combat, there weren't many of them to begin with, and there were even fewer experts. As for the Han Family Young Master, he didn't even give a single order. These classes that weren't valued were, of course, very emotional. However, their guild master Gu Xiaoshang was also a berserk warrior. At this time he was given the cold shoulder by Han Family Young Master. What else could they say? Especially when they saw that Gu Fei and Sword Demon had been successfully suppressed, they felt even more helpless. What do we do? Sword Demon asked Gu Fei. 2 fists can't fight against 4 hands, and a good man can't fight against many people. This sentence finally became the truth at this time. Gu Fei and Sword Demon watched the players strut around in front of their eyes, but they couldn't do anything. They just didn't have the chance to rush in front of them. Others might not know the distance that Gu Fei could teleport, but how could the Han Family Young Master not know? He had calculated everything. The Han Family Young Master knew the life force of the two of them. Sword Demon was very confident that no matter which direction the attack came from, there was no bluff. It had the lethality to kill the two of them in one wave. Teleport scroll. Gu Fei shouted at Sword Demon. He had used up all his scrolls, but Sword Demon should still have more. I've already taken it. Isn't there no chance now? Sword Demon was no longer holding a dagger in his hand. He had been holding a scroll, but the attacks didn't stop. Teleport scroll also needed some time. If he died before teleporting, it would be a waste. Give me one, split up and run. Gu Fei shouted. Sword Ghoul threw a scroll to Gu Fei, and the two of them suddenly ran in opposite directions, one on the left and one on the right. Team 1 XXX XXX. Team 2 XXX XXX. Team A XXX XXX. Team B XXX XXX. Team 3 and 4 for o'clock. Team 5 7 o'clock. Team C 9 o'clock. The other teams go counterclockwise. Han family young master didn't panic at all. He casually gave out orders. Gu Fei and Sword Demon ran in different directions, scattering the enemy's firepower. However, the encirclement was still like an iron wall, and the attacks didn't fall behind at all. Someone's coming. A player beside Han family young master whispered. I told you that you would come. Go kill them. Why did you tell me? I'll go. Gu Xiaoshang was also lonely. After hearing the direction that the player pointed, he used charge and whirlwind slash. He suddenly saw Yin Xiaozhu's figure suddenly flash out and jump to the side. The young master of the Han family looked at her and smiled. Little girl, a sneak attack isn't something that can be done so easily. Gu Xiaoshang put away his whirlwind slash and continued to attack Yin Xiaozhu. The thieves, berserkers, paladins, grandmasters of combat, and other superfluous players had been lonely for a long time. They all rushed at Yin Xiaozhu like a swarm of bees. When had Yin Xiaozhu ever experienced this kind of treatment? He didn't even fight, he just turned and ran. Little trash, don't bother with him. Han family young master saw that someone still wanted to chase, so he casually said, You're the trash, you're the trash. Yin Xiaozhu stopped and shouted while jumping. Han family young master didn't even look at her, and laughed in disdain. How many people do you want to lure away? I'll give you a few to play with. He then waved his hand. Just send a few to get rid of them. Regardless of whether this command was correct or not, the tone in which young Master Han gave the order was really displeasing. Those who were originally trying their best to charge forward and kill, upon hearing this, no one wanted to become a character that was just for you to play with. Han family young master saw that everyone had stopped, which was exactly what he wanted. He helplessly shrugged at Yin Xiaozhu. See, no one wants to play with you. Yin Xiaozhu wanted to cry but no tears came out. She sent a message to Strange Eye. Sis, there's nothing I can do. He's too cunning. Strange Eye was also helpless. She wasn't as fast as Gu Fei, so she arrived later than Gu Fei. With so many opponents, she couldn't do anything even if she wanted to. Therefore, she wanted to ask Yin Xiaozhu to lure some of the people away while she waited for an opportunity to cast a few ranged spells to help Gu Fei and the sword demon escape. She didn't expect that Han family young master would see through her plan. Of course, the berserker warriors that he had set up around the perimeter weren't just sitting around. They were there to defend against sudden attacks from the perimeter. He wouldn't let Yin Xiaozhu take them away so easily. I can only fight them head-on. Strange Eye gritted her teeth. She wanted to see where Gu Fei and the others were heading, so that she could lend them a hand. At that moment, a sharp wind whistled through the air. The professional sharpshooters on the field were shocked when they heard the sound. They knew that it was an extremely powerful arrow. The Han family young master staggered and almost fell to the ground. He knew that something was wrong when he heard the sound of the arrow. Even though he had a brain, he didn't have the same reaction speed as Gu Fei. He was still too slow to dodge the arrow. The arrow hit him in the shoulder. The strong impact reflected the destructive power of the arrow. The Han family young master was almost knocked over by the arrow. Cover! Gu Xiaoshang quickly called for people to cover him as they searched for the source of the arrow. However, the sound of the arrow was very familiar to the child elite group. The Han family young master pulled out the arrow and cursed. You Tian Shenming, you son of a bitch! Han family young master, I'm going to kill you. One of the sharpshooters moved with extreme speed towards the direction of the Han family's young master. He raised his hand and shot out another arrow. A warrior stood in front of him to protect him, but the arrow passed through him and continued flying toward the Han family young master behind him. The Han family young master had already cast a healing spell on himself. Even though a cleric couldn't fight, they were very durable, especially a skilled cleric like the Han family young master. If he had enough spells, he could be said to be immortal. It was just like how Gu Fei dared to say that he could kill 1,000 people if he had enough spells. Yutian Shenming kept firing arrows. He didn't care about the Han family young master. He would shoot whoever he could. As he fired arrows, he charged toward the encirclement of Gu Fei and the sword demon, shouting, "Qianli, I'm coming to help you." What's going on? Gu Xiaoshang was at a loss. She also recognized the expert Yutian Shenming, and knew that he was a member of Reigning the World. Even if he was friends with Gu Fei and the sword demon, this was a city battle mission. Wasn't the Han family young master seriously dealing with the two of them? What was he trying to do? Personal grudges. The Han family young master's face darkened. He was suffering the consequences of his own actions. If he hadn't kicked Yutian Shenming out of the mercenary group, no matter how much trouble Yutian Shenming was causing, he wouldn't have caused such a ruckus. He might even be gloating at the pathetic state Gu Fei and the sword demon were in. Yutian Shenming's standard was obviously much higher than Yan Xiaozhu's. He was also a long-range attacker, so he was a much bigger threat. Many people had to turn around and guard against him. However, with only one Yutian Shenming, the Han family young master wasn't afraid. He waved his staff and set the 12 o'clock position. Then he gave a series of commands. These idle players on the periphery were finally put to good use. 9 Dragons Ice Room. Strange Eye finally made her move. She was an unfamiliar player, so no one was on guard against her in the crowd. As soon as she jumped out, she raised her hand and cast a spell. Several blue and white lights suddenly wandered among the group of heavy-armored warriors who were blocking Gu Fei. Ice quickly froze and made a crackling sound. This skill was actually an area of effect spell. In an instant, a small group of players were frozen, and their movements were no different from being unable to move. Gu Fei also saw this opportunity and wanted to rush over. However, the Han family young master immediately mobilized the sorcerers to blast a sorcerer's isolation zone. Gu Fei couldn't swim out of the sea of fire. He turned around and swam towards the isolation zone. In the end, he was attacked by arrows again. After dodging the arrows, the spells came again. He and the sword demon were actually exhausted from the continuous attacks. Although they didn't say it out loud, they couldn't hold on for much longer. They only had a sliver of HP left. Although Strange Eye's attack didn't save the two of them, it allowed the other party to adjust their attacks. Gu Fei and the sword demon could keep their HP for a while longer. However, the situation was still worrying. Strange Eye didn't get a chance to continue attacking. There was already an assassin rushing towards her. Strange Eye threw out an ice tornado, but it only temporarily delayed the opponent's attack. Numbers. This was the fatal flaw on their side. Seeing that everything was useless, the group of sorcerers surrounding Gu Fei and the sword demon suddenly became chaotic. Many of the sorcerers' attacks were interrupted, and they turned their heads to see what was happening behind them. How could Gu Fei and the sword demon miss this opportunity? They rushed side by side towards the safe zone that had appeared because of the interruption of their spells. At the same time, they craned their necks to see what was happening. "Brother Zue." Gu Fei saw someone waving at him. The voice was very familiar. He rushed a few more steps and saw clearly. Fireball and his Eternal Life buddies were mercilessly shooting at the sorcerers. Although most of them were lurkers, arrows were the sorcerer's greatest enemy. Even if the sorcerers didn't die, they wouldn't be able to cast spells properly under such a threat. The sword demon used a fog ambush, while Gu Fei turned around and used dual flame flash. The two of them passed through an empty space. 2 large holes were torn in the sorcerer's formation, and the two of them successfully escaped. "Hurry up and eat the bread." The two rushed out and immediately wolfed down the food. They were more anxious to replenish their HP than mana. Gu Fei had almost never experienced such an experience before. However, he couldn't neglect his mana, so he held the bread in his left hand and the apple in his right. He asked the group of wretched men in front of him, "Why are you guys here?" "I called." At this time, Imperial Sky Shenming had also circled around and was chasing after them. The people from Immortal Amidst the Flowers were also getting anxious, setting traps and drawing their bows. Fireball's fighting spirit was incomparably high. "All of you better fucking hurry up. Gu Xiaoshang is over there. She's known as the Queen of Cloud City. You usually don't have a chance. You group of perverts. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka actually sighed righteously, making Gu Fei very speechless. Coming, get ready to fight. Yu Tianshengming rushed over here and called out to the group of wretched men. At this time, everyone's expression was quite solemn. Everyone knew that this battle was not going to be easy. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Gu Fei saw that they were all busy setting traps, getting their bows and arrows, and threw away the bread in his hand. Magic power. Gu Fei snapped his fingers at the vast expanse of land. Boundless Mang Mang rolled his eyes. Magic power my ass. Have you forgotten about the staff you sold? Oh sorry, I really forgot. Gu Fei was ashamed. Then let's go. Gu Fei looked at his mana recovery. 3 dual flame flashes should be no problem. He held the dark streamlight sword and rushed out. Awesome. When can I be like this? Yu Tianshengming was extremely envious. Ever since he started playing as an archer, being chased by a bunch of monsters was a common occurrence. He had never dared to rush into a group of monsters. If I was that awesome, I would see that all the beauties in the world are mediocre and tease them one by one. Fireball commented. Just now, they were chasing Yu Tianshengming all over the world. Now the roles suddenly changed. Gu Fei raised his sword and rushed over. The group of pursuers didn't react for a moment. Gu Fei was already in front of them. He was completely on foot. He didn't bear to use teleportation. He wanted to save mana for another circle of people. He turned around and used dual flame flashes. The vanguard was gone. Gu Fei dodged left and right, waiting for his spells to cool down. When the cooldown was over, he jumped into the most crowded area. He turned around and used dual flame flashes again. Another circle of backbone was gone. At this time, these pursuers were too stupid to not realize the severity of the situation. Without needing orders, everyone hurriedly retreated and waited for Han Family Young Master's command. Han Family Young Master? Han Family Young Master was currently coughing up blood. The tactics he set up had always been extremely targeted, but right now, there was the Imperial Heaven Divine Cry, and also the Eternal Life amidst the flowers. These were all too unexpected. No matter how calculative the Han Family Young Master was, he wouldn't have predicted this kind of violation of the rules. Forget about the Imperial Divine Cry, he was the one who provoked it. But to live forever in the flowers, wasn't that a little too unprincipled? If he knew that a guild like this would stand on Gu Fei's side, Han Family Young Master would have definitely brought more people. Between Rosy Clouds was a 1,000-man guild after all. Crushing Eternal Life in Flower Bush was a piece of cake. But didn't they not expect this? Young Master Han had only taken note of Strange Eye and Yen Xiaozhu, who he did not know as reinforcements. He did not expect the people who were supposed to be on their side to rebel. Let's retreat. Han Family Young Master said helplessly. I've already called people over. Gu Xiaoshang said. There's no point, they can retreat at any time. They're all agility class players, do you see? Once we have the advantage, they can just turn around and leave. We won't be able to surround them without preparation. Han Family Young Master said. What are these people doing? Gu Xiaoshang didn't understand either. The people from between Rosy Clouds gathered their troops. It was obvious that they wanted to leave, but Gu Fei didn't let them go and chased after them. Han Family Young Master was furious. Don't push your luck. Fuck, I can't use any more strength. Gu Fei used dual flame flash to wipe out a circle of people. He took a banana and peeled it as he turned around and left. Some of the archers and mages weren't happy. They raised their hands and waved at Gu Fei. Gu Fei sped up and easily escaped. Yu Tianshengming laughed loudly and yelled at Han Family Young Master. Han Family Young Master, you're too young to play with me. Wow. Gu Fei looked at him. You're bragging, you'll be punished by the heavens. I don't care, I'll talk after I've had my fun. Ha ha ha. Yu Tianshengming was proud. Chapter 694. Gu Fei was speechless towards Yu Tianshengming, so he looked towards Eternal's group. What's wrong with you guys? Don't you guys fight in the city war? Of course we do. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Then this. I'm an enemy, do you guys know? Gufei said. Of course we know. TCH. We don't care if we're enemies or not. We'll just do whatever we want. Fireball said. You guys are too carefree. Gufei praised. Of course. Fireball said proudly. Boundless Mang couldn't take it anymore and glared at them. The truth is that even if their guild seriously fought in the city war, they wouldn't be able to earn points, so they're just messing around here. Good messing around, good messing around. Gufei praised. He couldn't just take it lying down, right? Eternal's messing around helped him, so of course he had to praise his spirit. Did you kill Unsworn Sword? Yutian Shunming asked heartlessly. His death was a bit strange. Gufei said that at that time, he had failed to kill Sword of No Oath instantly. However, after Gufei had escaped, he had still been paying attention to Sword of No Oath's movements. He saw Sword of No Oath talking to young Master Gu Xiaoshang, and then suddenly dying. It was very mysterious. It's Gongzi's fake life, Sword Demon said. That staff of his? Yeah. At that time, if your dual flame flash hit Unsworn Sword, you would definitely be able to instantly kill him. However, in that gap, he used this fake life to replenish Unsworn Sword's health, so your second attack wasn't able to instantly kill him. Moreover, he was able to survive the wave of magic attacks from Rosy Clouds. However, according to the description of that skill, after 30 seconds, all the health recovered will be deducted. This guy didn't even say anything to Unsworn Sword, so didn't Unsworn Sword die just like that? Sword Demon said. Then who did this attack belong to? Gufei asked. Probably the gang members from Rosy Clouds, Sword Demon said. Are you sure? Anyway, it's not yours. Our mission is still here. Sword Demon said. Gufei took a look. Sure enough, the mission to assassinate Sword of Vow was still flashing in his quest window. Oh, you kicked me out of the city. Young master, you're such a good for nothing. You're still snitching? Yutian Shenming said disdainfully. There were a lot of people around, right? Gufei said. The brothers that Sword of Unsworn had brought with him earlier were not all dead, so they saw everything. Then I'll follow you. Yutian Shenming adjusted his 3 bows. Since Colorful Cloud had retreated, she naturally would not chase after Strange Eye and Yin Xiaozhu. The two of them walked over, confused. What's going on? Wah! The appearance of the young lady in front of Eternal Life naturally caused waves of screams. In addition, these fellows were now notorious, and a few of them no longer pretended to be arrogant. They directly went for broke, and when they saw the young lady, they all had frivolous expressions. It would be a miracle if the young lady did not dislike them. Even Gufei did not have the face to explain for them, so he just introduced them to each other. In the end, these guys all gave him a thumbs up, praising Gufei's ability to make friends with girls. Wow, they're experts. After hearing the introduction, the cries of the wolves became even sharper. Strange Eye and Yen Xiaozhu were also shocked when they learned that these people were the most shameless Eternal Life in the parallel world. Especially when they saw that Gufei seemed to be on good terms with these people, they subconsciously kept their distance from Gufei. This was the consequence of making friends carelessly. Gufei felt helpless. Looking at Sword Demon, he seemed to be quite calm. Mang Mang glared at these guys again, then walked out of the crowd and said to Strange Eye and Yin Xiaozhu, "Ignore them, that's all they are." When Strange Eye and Yen Xiaozhu saw that there was a girl in a dangerous guild like Eternal Life among flowers, they immediately looked at her with admiration. Oh, this is Mang Mang Mang. As Gufei introduced, Fireball took a step forward, hinting for Gufei to introduce him as well. Gufei showed him some respect and pointed at him. And this is that. Huh. Strange Eye and Yen Xiaozhu looked at Gufei. Who? Gufei did not say anything. Fireball was depressed. He knew that Gufei could not say his name, so he looked at the others with a pitiful gaze. But could his bad friends help him become famous at this time? They looked around, pretending to know nothing. Yen Xiaozhu spoke. That's his name? What a weird name. Gufei laughed. Fireball could not take it anymore, and was about to say it himself. But the kind Sword Demon spoke before he could. His name is Fireball. It's not convenient for a mage to have this name. Even Strange Eye, who did not usually smile, almost choked. Fireball tears drifted 20,000 miles. What a goddamn name. Let's not stand here, let's talk somewhere else, Gu Fei said. At this time, the disaster was finally over. The rolling boulders had stirred up a sandstorm. Those who weren't crushed to death by the boulders were mostly submerged in the sand. Their faces were covered in dust, and they could even knock down 2 caddies of sand with their equipment. Not a single one of them was in human form. Before Gu Fei and his group left, Gu Fei glanced at the city gate. He saw Xiao Lei's silhouette, staring blankly at the ruins of the city. Did he get the quest to clean up the disaster area? Gu Fei mourned for little Ray. Brother Zue, how did you become the defenders? The perverted man who lived forever among the flowers finally knew that he was a player, and was curious about something that he should be curious about. Gu Fei casually told them about everyone's situation. While Fireball was leading the way, preparing to return to where they were originally squatting, Boundless Mang, who was incomparably experienced in guild warfare, opened his mouth and said, "Now that we've caused such a ruckus, we might become the public enemy of the entire city." Gu Fei thought about it, and realized that there were many players watching the battle. Eternal life among flowers could not hide his wretched temperament, and many people might have recognized them. The guild players probably hated them more than they hated Gu Fei Sword Demon. After all, Gu Fei Sword Demon was an arrangement made by the system, but these guys were a little out of the ordinary. "Sorry for dragging you guys into this." Sword Demon was embarrassed. "Become the public enemy of the whole city? That sounds cool. Do you think it's a good idea to invite a pretty girl to run away?" "Running away sounds so bad. I've decided." One of the guys cleared his throat and said, "Hey girl, are you willing to run away with me?" A bunch of people gave him the finger. "I think it's not bad." Fireball agreed. "But you still need to practice your tone. It needs to be old and decadent." Strange Eye could not help but laugh again. He whispered to Gu Fei, "These people don't seem as annoying as they say." "Oh, tell them that. They'll be very happy," Gu Fei said. "Let's not." Strange Eye sweated. "What are you guys going to do next?" Mang Mang knew that he would not be able to negotiate with these guys, so he came to ask Gu Fei. "The Four Seas should be quite chaotic right now. Why don't we take this opportunity to kill Unsworn Sword?" Gu Fei said. Everyone stopped in their tracks and looked at Gu Fei. Even the perverted guys were quiet, their faces filled with surprise. "I agree." Yutian Shinming was excited. On the other side, Unsworn Sword's guild members were gathered in the camp. The entire Four Seas was immersed in a gloomy atmosphere. Of the 1,000 or so players, more than 500 had died in this disaster. Almost half of them had died. Only a small portion of them had died in Gu Fei's hands. Most of them had been buried alive when the giant stone pyramid collapsed, or crushed to death by the flying boulders. That wasn't the end of it. At this moment, there were people shouting for help in the guild channel. It was a group of players who had been buried in the pile of rocks but hadn't died yet. When Reflected Years did a head count, there were actually 41 players, all of whom had thick physiques. He should have said something. Unsworn Sword looked at the gloomy faces around him, and the size in the channel. He did not feel good about it. Surprisingly, there weren't any complaints from the guild. This was because everyone was disheartened, and didn't have the heart to dwell on the past failures. Everyone had their own thoughts and plans. Guild leader Unsworn Against the Current walked up to Unsworn Sword with a pained expression. "What are you doing?" Unsworn Sword glared at him. "Are the brothers all right?" Countercurrent asked with a look of concern. "Thank you." Unsworn Sword replied. "No one wanted this to happen." Against the Current said. "What the hell are you talking about? What happened?" Unsworn Sword was enraged. "Haha, I understand how you feel. You should rest first. Leave the city war to us." After saying that, he left with his brothers. His original pained expression also disappeared as he walked, and in the end he was beaming with joy. "Reigning the Four Seas, I think we're done for." Against the Current happily said to the brothers beside him. "I think so too. The eyes of those guys in the guild are dead." Another person agreed. Once unhindered disbands, there will be a lot of experts left idle. We have to seize the opportunity to fight for them. Another person said, how are we supposed to fight for them? Our guild is full. Are we going to kick people over these experts? I don't think that's possible. Of course not. Against the Current nodded and thought of a solution. Suddenly, the footsteps of the people beside him slowed down. Upstream turned his head to look curiously. The few of them were staring blankly ahead. Upstream looked up and saw that the Han clan's young master and Gu Xiaoshang were leading a group of people towards them. Against the Current recognized the guild emblem of rosy clouds. This group of people were all from Rosy Clouds. Moreover, the Han family young master, who had just left the guild not long ago, was already with them. This made Against the Current quite unhappy with Gu Xiaoshang. In his opinion, there was no reason for Han family young master to leave the guild. Looking at the situation in front of him, he naturally thought that Gu Xiaoshang had secretly poached him. However, when he thought about it, he felt that it was strange. Poaching was something that most guilds did. However, he had never heard of Gu Xiaoshang's Rosy Clouds doing such a thing. The stability of her guild members was extremely rare even among rank 6 guilds. Moreover, there were still noobs in her guild who weren't even level 30. In Against the Current's eyes, this was quite a joke. Great guild leader Gu. Against the Current greeted Gu Xiaoshang. His words were filled with sarcasm. What are you doing here? Gu Xiaoshang asked. Isn't it because guild leader Unsworn just lost? I'm here to check on him. Against the Current smiled. You've been running around all day. Aren't you tired? Gu Xiaoshang said with disdain. You. Against the Current wasn't Unsworn sword. No matter what Gu Xiaoshang said, he listened happily. Gu Xiaoshang didn't pay attention to him. He led his people around. What made Against the Current even more depressed was that Han family young master acted as if he didn't see him. In his heart, he felt that Han family young master should take the opportunity to say a few words to him. Even if he didn't say anything, he should at least look ashamed when he saw him. In the end, he saw this guy's face turn dark. It was as if someone owed him money. From the beginning to the end, the corner of his eyes didn't even look at Against the Current. Damn it. He's so arrogant just because he poached a Han family young master? Is there a need to be like this? Someone beside Against the Current said angrily. Against the Current's head was finally clear. He sighed. Gu Xiaoshang has always been very blunt. Han family young master has always been arrogant too. They're still the same. There hasn't been any change. I received news that Qianli Drunk and the others escaped. It was Yutian Shenming and Eternal Life in Flowers who suddenly appeared and helped them. Ha 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 ha. Against the Current laughed. I was wondering why those two had such bad faces. Heh. There's actually a guild that went to help Qianli Drunk and Sword Demon. They definitely didn't expect this. But Eternal Life in Flowers is a little too ridiculous. Those fellows didn't expect to get any points in the city war. They just wanted to join in the fun and have fun. Let's not provoke them. Those guys are really annoying. If they really stick to us, it'll take a lot of effort to get rid of them. Moreover, Qianli Drunk and Sword Demon are with them. Roaming the 4 seas is really an unlucky year. Against the Current said. The few of them were discussing as they walked. Suddenly, they received a guild notification from the system. Player Infeng has left the guild. What's going on? Who is this? Against the Current frowned. He seemed to recognize this ID, but he couldn't remember who it was. In reality, he didn't care who this person was. He just had to ask about the matter of leaving the guild. I don't know either. Someone beside him said. Another person frowned and thought for a moment. Suddenly, he came to a realization. Isn't it that guy? The guy who accepted the quest today. Against the Current also remembered. He felt strange. Why did he leave the guild for no reason? Did he make a mistake? Let's ask. I don't have his friend. Me neither. Me neither. Infeng was a nobody in singing wine. Against the Current and the others were all in the upper echelons of the guild. None of them had this nobody as a friend. So when they asked in the guild channel, everyone was still confused. Against the Current asked if anyone knew Infeng, who knew that this question was like an order. Suddenly, a bunch of system notifications popped up. People in Singing Wine left the guild one after another. This time, the guild channel was in an uproar. Occasionally, one or two people would leave the guild. This wasn't strange in a large guild with thousands of members. But at this time, several members suddenly left the guild at the same time. Something must have happened. Against the Current had just been asking about Yinfeng's situation. Now he was being questioned by the guild members about why so many people suddenly left the guild. Against the Current didn't know why. He stared blankly at the row of IDs that flashed past. He didn't recognize a single one of them. What's going on? Against the Current muttered. In his heart, he knew that something must have happened. But they weren't attacking the city, nor were there any conflicts or agreements with other guilds. Nothing had happened. So why did so many people suddenly leave the guild? Not many. Just 11 people. Someone said. 11 people is easy to fill, but something must have happened. Against the Current said. Could it be Han family young masters doing? Someone guessed. When a person left a guild, they would sometimes take their friends with them. This was a very common thing. He really doesn't have any friends in the guild. Against the Current said with certainty. I think it might have something to do with Yinfeng. You don't know any of these 11 people? Against the Current asked. He didn't know any of them. Lemongrass. I know this one. I'll ask. One of them said. Against the Current and the others waited expectantly for his news. Not long after, this person began to relay the situation to them. Indeed, they're all with Yinfeng. They have friends who are also in the guild. Isn't there a city war right now? It's because they didn't go over to help, so they all went over and are apologizing to me. This kind of thing wasn't new. Usually, when famous characters in a guild transferred or established their own guild, there would be a serious loss of members. But right now, only 12 people had left. Moreover, they were all unknown characters. This really couldn't be considered a big deal, especially for Singing Wine. The others let out a sigh of relief, but Against the Current furrowed his brows. He looked at them and said, Is that really the case? What's wrong? The others didn't understand. If it really was for the city war, then they would have called people over a long time ago. Could it be that they felt that they weren't strong enough, so they called people over? Against the Current said. That makes sense. The others said. Against the Current shook his head. It sounds reasonable, but look at the city war now. Which guild is strong enough? Not to mention 12 people. Even if he called 100 of them, what's the use? Maybe they weren't happy with the actual battle, and casually complained to their friends. Yinfeng and the others felt embarrassed and had no choice but to go. Call people over to the previous quest location to take a look. Against the Current suddenly said. What do you suspect? The person beside him asked. I don't know, but I don't think it's something as simple as a friend calling them over. By the way, we still have people over there, right? I remember I specifically left someone behind to see if we can get other quests. Against the Current said. Yes, I remember you left someone behind too. Where are they? Against the Current asked. Who did you leave behind? I left. Against the Current thought for a moment, and suddenly came to a realization. Yinfeng, I left him behind. He failed the quest, so I asked him to stay there and see if there would be new quests after a while. Butterfly Knot. Due to yesterday's tragedy, this chapter is too sad to name, so it's named Untitled as a souvenir. Hurry up and take pictures. Chapter 695. Quick, call everyone over there. Although Upstream couldn't tell what was going on, he felt that something was amiss. Singing Wine hadn't made any moves to attack Cloud City during this period of time. After the Guild Alliance was disbanded, Upstream didn't think that they would be able to take down Cloud City by force, so he sent most of his guild members to search for quests while paying attention to the situation on the battlefield. They did collect some scattered quests, but there weren't any major events that would affect the progress of the city war. However, with the accumulation of these quests, Upstream felt that their guild wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Those who fought against the defending NPCs didn't have an easy time. As the number of players dying at the east, west, and south gates increased, they became weaker and weaker. In the end, the system guards were able to wait for them to come in waves and destroy them. Now, even the players attacking from the 3 city gates were no longer as enthusiastic. Some were still persisting, while others were busy collecting quests. There were also some who felt bored and decided to log off. Of course, these were small guilds that didn't have any desires. The members of small guilds didn't care much about guild contribution because even if they contributed, they might not be able to exchange for any direct benefits. However, it was different in big guilds. Guild points were almost equivalent to currency within a guild. When a guild completed some large-scale quests and obtained excellent equipment as a reward, it wasn't up to the guild leader to decide how to distribute the points. The rules set by the system was that guild members had to spend guild points to obtain excellent equipment. In order to obtain points, one had to participate in the guild's activities. Otherwise, no matter how skilled one was, there was no other way to obtain points that were calculated by the system. However, the system's calculation was inevitably a bit stiff. Some of the more humane contributions couldn't be calculated by the system. These could only be compensated by the guild leader in other ways. Every guild would use the system's point system to establish their own reward and punishment system, but the ones that could actually implement it were the big guilds. This was actually a virtuous cycle. Nothing could be accomplished without rules. Since everyone abided by the rules, the development of the guild would naturally flourish and grow bigger. The bigger the guild, the more difficult quests it could accept, and the better the rewards. In order to obtain the rewards, the guild members would naturally be more proactive in participating in guild activities to earn points. Only by entering this cycle would players feel a stronger sense of belonging to the guild, and the guild's development would become more stable. As for those guilds that only had rules, but their members didn't care about them at all, they only relied on a few enthusiastic members to support them. They definitely wouldn't be able to make a name for themselves. When the time came and they envied the equipment of the big guild's members, it was possible that they would instantly scatter. To be able to develop to this day, naturally, they were not a motley crew. Therefore, although the city war did not go smoothly, no one in the guild quit. Everyone was doing their best to find quests. If they could complete a quest, even though they didn't know how many points they could get from the city war, the guild point system would clearly calculate it. This wasn't much different from making money. Against the Current called out to the players from Against the Current, and the players from Drinking and Singing put down what they were doing and gathered together. They began to follow Against the Current's instructions to the crater that they had previously completed their quest. Keep in touch with that lemongrass. Ask them what guild they're from and who their guild leader is. We can work together, Countercurrent instructed one of his brothers. After that person sent a few messages, his expression became uneasy. He's stammering, and the guild leader isn't willing to say anything. I think there's a problem. Fine, we might as well turn off the messages. This is troublesome. We've alerted the enemy. Tell the players nearby to hurry over and see what's going on. Against the Current said. What's going on? Why don't I get it? One of them scratched his head in confusion. We'll figure it out eventually. Against the Current already had a plan in mind, but he didn't want to make wild guesses without concrete evidence. There was only one thing he was sure of. Infeng wasn't the mastermind. He was probably just a bargaining chip that everyone was fighting for. The real competitor was still behind the scenes. As for who that person was, it wasn't hard to guess. Infeng and the others had joined whichever guild they were from. Unhindered clearly didn't have the energy to do such a thing, so who else could it be? Against the Current's thoughts stopped at the other 3 rank 6 guilds. Apart from them, the other weaker guilds wouldn't have such a big appetite. They wouldn't fight over food with Against the Current. The vanguard of Against the Current arrived very quickly. Following Against the Current's instructions, they didn't reveal themselves. Instead, they had a thief sneak up on them and investigate the situation. Pay attention to which guild is over there. Against the Current ordered. The assassin Flowing was the first to arrive at the crater. After reporting to the party leader, he received a personal order from the guild leader. Flowing was an individual hero through and through, but he was very diligent in participating in guild activities. This was because he wanted a weapon. The dagger shattered snow. Flowing had seen this dagger in the hands of a friend from another city and liked it very much. However, this dagger was a reward for completing a guild quest, and a large-scale one at that. There was no other way to obtain it. Because of this, Flowing joined against the current and diligently accumulated points. Every day, he would ask around about the various guild quests, hoping to be able to participate in the quest that rewarded shattered snow. He didn't know if it was because the quests in each city were different, but Flowing hadn't seen the quest that his friend mentioned in Against the Current. He could only frequently participate in guild quests of this level. As long as there was a reward for shattered snow, he would definitely take it. His guild points were already ranked 4th in Against the Current, because he had never spent anything before. Apart from shattered snow, he didn't want anything else. When Against the Current found out that the scout was Flowing, he was very relieved. He was also a small character, but Against the Current had a deep impression of him. It wasn't just because of his points ranking, but also because he diligently participated in all sorts of quests without any complaints. The guild leader liked this kind of character, especially since he had accumulated so many points. This meant that he wouldn't leave the guild so easily. Be careful, Against the Current personally reminded Lu Yu in the channel. Okay. Lu Yu replied simply. She entered stealth and slowly walked towards the crater. Nowadays, stealth was no longer a 100% safe way to spy on others. More and more equipment and skills had anti-stealth effects. Any mature team would be equipped with anti-stealth equipment. However, Lu Yu looked at her surroundings and realized that there wasn't any form of cover in this pit. She could only walk straight up. As someone who aspired to be a solo hero, he had to be very cautious. Flowing carefully approached the crater step by step. Every 2 or 3 steps, he would turn his head to check his surroundings. There was no movement at all. Even his closest comrade was hiding in the forest. Just as Flowing was about to reach the crater, he suddenly received a message from his comrade. Be careful. Flowing turned his head. He saw flames rising from the small forest, and heard the sounds of various skills clashing together. The other side was prepared. Did that mean that he had already been discovered? As expected, the moment Flowing turned his head, 2 assassins had appeared in front of him. Their daggers flashed with a cold light as they stabbed towards him. Flowing wasn't a famous person, but that didn't mean his skills were bad. Perhaps his guild friends who had done quests with him would think that his awareness was average, but that was because his ambition wasn't there. He had never thought of cooperating with others. His goal was to be a lone wolf that could roam the world alone. He didn't have any special team awareness, but his solo PvP skills were definitely outstanding. Facing the 2 daggers that came out of nowhere, Luin didn't panic. He quickly deactivated his stealth and ran around the 2 daggers. He waved his sword and slashed at the assassin on the right. At the same time, he grabbed a small sandbag with his left hand and threw it in all directions, scattering the white lime powder. As Flowing expected, since the other side was prepared, there would definitely be more than 2 assassins in stealth. Being alone in this predicament, Flowing became inexplicably excited. He didn't forget his mission. He paid attention to the other side's chest but didn't find any guild emblems. His opponents had already surrounded him. Flowing was clear of his own strength and knew that he wasn't a match for so many people. Although it was just a game and there was no punishment for dying, to Flowing, who had his own ideals, dying at any time was an extremely uncomfortable ending. Facing such an encirclement, he could only escape unscathed, and that would be victory. Flowing's swift movement hadn't expired yet. He pretended to charge in one direction, and after leading everyone to move, he suddenly turned around and changed directions. The players weren't stupid. Such a simple change wouldn't cause them to be shaken off. However, to them this was a sudden turn. Some of them reacted quickly while others reacted slowly. Flowing took advantage of the large gap between a player with fast reaction and another player with slow reaction time, and passed through like a ghost. Lu Yu turned his head back and smiled proudly. To him, it was a great satisfaction to have done such a thing. However, these assassins didn't let him go so easily and chased after him. Lu Yu smiled again, and lightly patted the badge on her chest. Her speed suddenly increased, and in an instant, she had shaken off the assassins behind her by a large margin. This was a skill emblem that came with the skill speed up. After using it, the user's movement speed increased by 30% for 10 seconds. 10 seconds was enough for Flowing to leave these players behind. Since everyone was of the same class, their movement speeds weren't that different. With such a large gap, it was basically impossible to catch up. The assassins all stopped in their tracks and watched as Flowing returned to the crater. Lu Yin didn't actually leave. After Stealth's cooldown was over, he entered Stealth once more and reported the situation to the guild. Upstream had already received the report. The first to arrive was a small group of players. Lu Yu went forward to scout while the others hid in the forest. In the end, they encountered an ambush and were completely annihilated. Lu Yu was also surrounded by several players. Upstream didn't expect Flowing to still be alive. He couldn't help but look at him in a new light. The enemy was prepared. I didn't see any guild emblems. Flowing didn't manage to scout much. At that time, his line of sight wasn't able to reach the bottom of the crater. Attention all squads, assemble into combat squads. Squads 1 and 2 to the east, squads 3 and 4 to the west, squads 5 and 6 to the north, squads 7 and 8 to the south. Encircle them from all 4 directions. Elite squads and mage squads, stand by at the coordinates XXX in the northwest. Singing to Wine had a total of 10 teams. Team 1 to Team 8 were standard teams of each class. Team 9 was an elite team made up of experts. Team 10 was the mage team that specialized in singing to Wine. Flowing, think of a way to figure out the strength of the ambush in the small forest. Upstream gave Flowing another order. At this time, Flowing stopped at the edge of the small forest. He had stealth, so he wasn't afraid. After receiving the order, he immediately entered the forest. Although the forest was small, it was quite dense. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to hide people. Lu Yu asked his brothers about the situation of the ambush, and had a rough idea of what was going on. Moving in stealth in the forest, the sound of footsteps could easily be exposed. Lu Yu didn't dare to act rashly after taking a few steps. He took out some useless trash from his pocket and stood behind a tree. Suddenly, he stuck his head out and threw it in a direction that he had calculated. Of course, this throwing was also considered a method of attack. Once he used this action, Lu Yu's figure was immediately exposed. He quickly dodged into a bush that he had already seen. Then he stole a glance at the direction where he threw the trash. A few players behind the trees revealed themselves when they heard the noise. 2 mages even directly attacked and bombarded the area. After the bombardment, there was no one left. Lu Yu couldn't see their expressions, but he assumed that they were at a loss. He couldn't help but laugh. There aren't many ambushes. They are mainly hiding behind the trees. If we aren't in stealth, we will be easily discovered when we enter the forest. Then they will launch a sneak attack and kill us in one round. This is probably their main strategy. Lu Yu reported to Upstream. Then I'll send a few assassins over. You lead them and eliminate these guys. Upstream was very satisfied with Lu Yu's work and wanted to promote this guy. Wait a bit. If I can survive, then we'll talk about it. Lu Yu replied. The ambushers in the forest weren't fools. They were fooled by Lu Yu's trash and didn't find anyone. However, the commotion was clear and the few of them naturally knew that someone had entered the forest and was secretly fooling around with them. They immediately walked out from behind the trees and gathered together to carefully investigate. Lu Yu hid in the bushes without moving. She was nervous and excited at the same time. This is the game life I want. Lu Yu thought excitedly. If Lu Yu used stealth at this time, these people had anti-stealth equipment and would be able to easily discover him. But now that he was completely in hiding, it was up to the players to find him. This caused the group of people to have a hard time. They searched around but couldn't find anything. They just knew that there was definitely someone hiding nearby. They wanted to cry but no tears came out. The 2 mages started to use spells to randomly blast the area, trying to blast the person out. But Lu Yu was very calm. One spell wouldn't be able to blast him to death. So when a flaming 3,000 layers flame started burning in his arms, he endured it and didn't move. He waited for the flame to die down, and then lightly tore off a piece of bread and stuffed it into his mouth. Lu Yu really admired himself more and more. Where did he run off to? Lu Yu could even hear the other party's discussion. Did he go into stealth? He should have been discovered by now, one of them said. Lu Yu immediately reported to Countercurrent. A total of 8 people, and they have anti-stealth. How are you? Very good. Lu Yu said. Hold on, we'll be there soon. Have you guys searched thoroughly? The 8 of them couldn't find Lu Yu and felt uneasy. We've already bombed him once. A mage said. What's the use of that? Do you think you're Qianli? Once he's drunk, he'll run away. What's wrong with hiding? Who called me? Everyone was shocked. After this sentence, there was actually another voice coming from the other side. Lu Yu turned around and saw a black-robed mage carrying a sword casually walking into the forest. When Lu Yu turned around, that person's gaze actually followed his direction. He saw me? It can't be? Lu Yu hesitated. He felt that he had hidden himself quite well. Who is it? The 8 of them already ran towards the direction of the voice. It's me. I think I heard someone say my name, the mage said as he continued to walk forward. Saw me? Coincidence? Saw me? Coincidence? Lu Yu's mind was in an intense struggle. In the end, the mage really did walk to his side. Lu Yu was still lying there, and looked up in a daze. He saw that the mage was also looking down at him. What are you lying there for? The mage said to Lu Yu. Lu Yu finally confirmed that he had been discovered. Just as he was at a loss of what to do, the 8 of them rushed forward to help him out. They shouted, "Who is it?" as they called out their attacks. Lu Yu, who was discovered, naturally felt that there was no point in hiding. Moreover, looking at the mage's appearance and hearing him reply to those people, Lu Yu had already guessed who this person was. Especially when he saw that he was obviously not in the same group as the 8 of them. Lu Yu felt that he had encountered a good show. Lu Yu nimbly rolled to the side and dodged the opponent's spell. The 8 of them saw his actions and exclaimed, "There's still one more." Just as they finished speaking, the first person had already rushed in front of them. There was a burst of fire in the forest, and before the 8 of them could figure out what was going on, they were all dead. It really is Qianli drunk. Lu Yu rolled a few times and hid in a haystack. After seeing the opponent's attack, he was certain in his heart. At the same time, he felt that Qianli was drunk and focused on fighting the enemy, so he definitely wouldn't notice his hiding place. Just as he was enjoying peeping, he saw Qianli drunk turn his head and look at him in his haystack. "Why are you still lying there?" Butterfly knot. The Lu Yu that appeared in this chapter is the reward from the previous event. It has nothing to do with the solo Lu Yu. There is no need for everyone to suspect or fantasize. Chapter 696. Lu Yu was shocked. She didn't think that Qianli would be able to find her the moment he turned his head. At first, he suspected that Qianli was bluffing, but when their eyes met and Gu Fei winked at him, what else was there to doubt? Charge up, kill him and make a name for yourself. This thought flashed across Lu Yu's mind, but she chose to give up after a second. This was because there was a very simple question in front of her. Could he charge up and kill all 8 of them in one go? He couldn't. Therefore, once Qianli got drunk, he wouldn't be a match for him. Thus he could only run. Lu Yu turned around and ran out of the forest. The cooldown of speed up was over and Lu Yu felt that it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape. However, before she could take a few steps, she heard a pata sound. She felt her feet tighten. She had actually stepped into a trap. Who is so annoying? I just set up a trap. A person stood up from the bushes and looked over. Once again, their eyes met. Who are you? That person asked. Lu Yu didn't know how to introduce herself. Why did you step into my trap? That person was very unhappy. Lu Yu wasn't happy either. Why did he make it sound like she purposely stepped on it? Did she look that cheap? At this moment, Qianli rushed over. Seeing the 2 of them arguing, he hurried over to ask. This person stepped into my trap. That person complained to Qianli. Gu Fei looked at the person in front of him. This person was obviously not from the same group as the ambushers from before. Gu Fei had yet to figure out their relationship. Who are you? Gu Fei asked, but he had already seen the badge on Lu Yu's chest. Oh, singing to wine. I'm not singing to wine. My name is Lu Yu. Perhaps some people like to use the name of a guild to show off, but Lu Yu had always placed more importance on himself. Guild. That was because he had to participate in order to get the Shattered Snow. His goal was to make his solo name known throughout the parallel world. Who were those 8 people? Gu Fei asked. Lu Yu was speechless. How would I know? You didn't ask them but asked me instead. I did, but they didn't say anything. I thought you knew. I don't know either. In just a short while, the trap under Lu Yu's feet had already escaped. Gu Fei also looked at the man strangely. Why are you setting up a trap here? Since I have nothing to do, I might as well set up a trap to catch a girl. Who would have thought that we'd be tricked by such a fellow? That person was very dispirited. When Lu Yu heard these words, it was like thunder piercing her ears. She looked at the person and said, "A person who lives eternally amongst the flowers?" Seeing that Lu Yu was able to determine his background, the man's mood became much better. He smiled and said, well said, well said. Don't mess around here. Let's go play somewhere else. Gu Fei said. Yes, Brother Zui. That person had a strange sense of respect towards Gu Fei. It wasn't the kind of respect that a small soldier would have for a guild leader. It wasn't like a newbie was afraid of an expert either. Lu Yu couldn't understand this kind of respect. Only Gu Fei himself knew that this was because the people from eternally amongst the flowers thought that he was someone who had a lot of luck with girls. After that person left, Gu Fei continued to talk to Lu Yu. You're here. Did your guild make a move or did you come here on your own accord? Lu Yu looked at Gu Fei. You're the defender, right? How can I tell you? Although Lu Yu didn't care much about the guild, she still respected the rules of the game. She was more principled than the people from eternally amongst the flowers. If that's the case, then should I kill you? Gu Fei was also prepared to respect his principles. Lu Yu didn't hesitate and turned to run. She didn't use the speed up before and activated it with a slap of her badge. In the end, she didn't even run 10 meters before her feet got stuck. Motherfucker. Lu Yu was flustered and exasperated. Another head popped out from the bushes. His face was originally filled with excitement, but when he saw Lu Yu, it was as if a layer of coal had been smeared across his face. Who are you? Lu Yu was speechless again. She guessed that this person was from eternally amongst the flowers. However, these people were all here to set traps. Could it be that they were all trying to catch a girl? Why did you step on my trap? That person walked out from the bushes and questioned Lu Yu. I didn't do it on purpose. Facing this group of people, Lu Yu's thoughts couldn't keep up. In the time it took to say a few words, Gu Fei was already behind him. Lu Yu knew that he wouldn't be able to escape this time. In the end, Gu Fei didn't bother with him and looked at that person. Why are you here too? It's not just me, everyone else is here. That person said. Gu Fei looked around, and indeed felt that there was more than one person. Some even popped their head out and greeted Gu Fei. It's not like we have anything to do anyway. That person smiled. Before Gu Fei took advantage of the chaos caused by Unhindered to find trouble with Unsworn Sword. However, other than Yutian Shenming who was watching the show, everyone else said that Gu Fei's thinking was too radical. After suffering such a huge loss, even if Unhindered is a bit scattered, Unsworn Sword definitely won't let down his guard. Boundless Mang said. Young Master's thinking is obviously to wait for us to appear next to Unsworn Sword. This time, we almost fell into his trap. If it wasn't for Yutian and the others arriving in time, we would definitely be in trouble. Sword Demon said. Gu Fei thought that it made sense. No matter how chaotic the guild was, as the guild leader, Unsworn Sword would always have a group of trusted aides around him. Even if there were only 100 people, it would still be extremely difficult to deal with. Moreover, there was also the Han family young master who was working with Rosy Clouds, who knew where he was hiding. This mission really wasn't going to be easy. He didn't have a chance to complete Unsworn Sword's mission, and Sword Demon's bottle cap assassination was even more impossible. He held on to a glimmer of hope and asked the guys from Eternal Life and Flowers, but no one knew about this small fry. Sword Demon had basically given up, and was ready to return to the city to give up on this mission. And what Gu Fei could do at this time was naturally to continue his mission in the guard. Visit Gilgino again. Yu Tianshunming was dead set on following Gu Fei and becoming a troublemaker. Strange Pupil and Yan Xiaozhu didn't participate in the city war, but now that they saw Gu Fei and Sword Demon going against the entire city, they thought it was quite interesting and decided to stay and help. As for Eternal Life and Flowers and the others, even if they wanted to return to the city war, they didn't have the chance to do so anymore. These guys were already tied to the pillar of shame of being traitors. It could be said that their guild was basically destroyed, but these guys didn't care at all. They were still enjoying themselves, following Gu Fei around, and actually went to the forest to set up a trap. Brother Zue, since we have nothing to do now, let's make do and help you if we can. Fireball came forward to explain for his brothers. Where's Moonchild? Gu Fei asked. Now that they met up with Eternal Life and Flowers, it seemed like Fireball represented that they were talking more and more often. Logically speaking, this should be the guild leader's responsibility. Moonchild? He's here, but I don't know where he is. Are you looking for him? Then why don't you look for the Boundless Forest? Wherever the Boundless Forest is, that's where he will naturally follow. Fireball said. Gu Fei sweated and hurriedly said, It's fine. Brother Zue, don't worry about us. We'll just play by ourselves. Fireball said. Gu Fei didn't know what was so fun about this little forest, but because he didn't know, it meant that he wasn't the same type of person as them. Thus Gu Fei felt very comforted. On the other hand, Lu Yu had already removed the trap this time, but at this time, there were many heads surrounding her. She didn't know how many traps there were in all directions, so she didn't know whether she should run or not. If he ran again and stepped into another trap. Lu Yu didn't want to keep throwing people around. Lone Rangers were all very noble, and had a lot of pride. Lu Yu was already waiting for Gu Fei to give him a quick death. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would casually exchange a few words with those people, and then turn around to leave? Lu Yu felt it was strange. AI. He couldn't help but call out to Gu Fei. You're not going to kill me? Lu Yu asked. Oh. If you want, I don't mind. Gu Fei said as he unsheathed his sword. I don't want to. Lu Yu hurriedly said. Who would want to die if they had nothing better to do? Thus, Gu Fei nodded his head and turned around. Lu Yu stood there blankly for a moment before she suddenly took a step forward to follow him. Gu Fei quickly sensed it and turned his head. Why are you following me? That? You do your thing and I'll do mine. It's just a coincidence that we're going the same way. Lu Yu said. Oh, do what you need to do. Gu Fei turned around and continued walking. Lu Yu also slightly adjusted his route. From the one with Gu Fei to two parallel tracks. It looked like the two of them were getting further and further apart. However, Lu Yu always ensured that Gu Fei was within his line of sight. Lu Yu was quite scheming. He felt that it would be much more convenient to rely on this strong assassin to open up a path while he took the opportunity to scout out the situation. Seeing that Gu Fei didn't seem to notice his scheme, and just walked to the edge of the forest to observe the situation outside, Lu Yu quietly disappeared to the side. Gu Fei looked outside the forest while munching on an apple. He replenished his mana, and then walked out. There's an assassin. Lu Yu knew about this situation. However, these assassins were enough to deal with normal players. Against a drunk Qianli, they would probably become a point machine. Lu Yu was thinking about this. He saw that Gu Fei was getting closer and closer to the hole. However, the assassins that were supposed to ambush him didn't show themselves. Instead, a few heads popped out from the hole and quickly walked up. They were very friendly towards Gu Fei. Lu Yu was astonished. He couldn't help but walk closer until he heard their conversation. Brother Qianli, ha. What's going on? Lu Yu was suspicious. Following that, he heard the conversation between the two sides. Lu Yu's face was filled with tears. He originally thought that there was some sort of conspiracy between the two sides. However, After listening to the conversation, he finally understood that there was no conspiracy. The assassins didn't make a move. Instead, there were people who personally came up to greet him. This was all because Qianli was drunk. They didn't want to offend such a strong person, so they wanted to use a peaceful method to solve the problem. Thinking about how he and his brothers were treated, Lu Yu realized that he was still far from being famous in the parallel world. At this moment, Gu Fei was also confused. He had sensed the presence of those stealthy assassins at the beginning. His right hand, which was in his pocket, had already grabbed the Night Streamer sword, ready to strike at any time. Who would have thought that these assassins would not make a move? Instead, a group of people quickly came out of the pit and called him brothers. Gu Fei was at a loss. He carefully looked at the people in front of him. He was 100% sure that he didn't know them. Why did they call each other brothers? Fortunately, the other party did not continue to call Gu Fei brother, without asking about the truth. After a few compliments, he changed the topic. Haha, after saying so much, Brother Qianli might not know me yet. This little brother is looking up at the sky. The other party extended his hand towards Gu Fei. Gu Fei took out his right hand from his pocket. It was still holding a sword. Everyone was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. Gu Fei only smiled and switched the sword to his left hand. He then extended his right hand towards the sky under the tree. The sky under the tree was also shocked by Gu Fei's action of unsheathing his sword. At this moment, when he saw that Gu Fei only switched the sword to his left hand, he laughed and took another step forward. He shook hands with Gu Fei. One couldn't let go of one's guard. Gu Fei saw that the sky under the tree wanted to shake hands with him. He was wary that the sky under the tree was going to use a close combat method. Thus, he switched the Night Streamer sword to his left hand, and even set the damage to his left hand. Gu Fei had already thought about it. As long as there was the slightest movement, he would use dual flame flash with his left hand and condense lightning palm with his right. How could he not kill the guy in front of him? In the end, shaking hands was really just a simple courtesy. After the person let go, he continued to smile. Brother Qianli, are you still a little confused about my background? Hehe, this isn't strange. This little brother is just a small character. I'm just the guild leader of Wandering Soul in Cloud City. I'm afraid that Brother Qianli has never heard of our guild's name before, right? Never heard of it. Gu Fei was very honest, but as he spoke he was already calling out in the chat. Brother you. Brother you. No response. Brother you, there's gossip. No response. Super gossip. Still no response. Super exclusive private gossip. Brother you was in pain. He pulled at his hair and banged his head against a tree. In the end he couldn't hold it in and replied with tears in his eyes. What gossip? Open the private chat. Can we talk alone? Gu Fei was wary of the eavesdroppers. Before Brother Yu could reply, Han family young master had already sent a message. Brother Yu, if you don't tell me after listening, I'll kill you. Brother Yu was in tears. It's hard to survive in the cracks. These two people each had a message in the chat, but they didn't communicate directly. No matter what, they wanted to get back at Brother Yu. Brother Yu was also angry. He clenched his teeth. I won't open it. If you have anything to say it in the chat. You insist? Gu Fei said these 3 words. Are you sure? Han family young master also said these 3 words. A threat. A naked threat. But this time, Brother Yu had completely thought it through. Once he opened the private chat, these 2 fellows would split up and send private messages. This would only make things more difficult for him. So this time he clenched his teeth and wasn't afraid of the threat. I insist and confirm. Okay. Gu Fei said. Awesome. Han family young master said. Brother Yu trembled. Soul under the tree, what kind of guild is this? At this moment, Gu Fei was asking about the situation of Wang under the tree's guild while asking Brother Yu, a trustworthy person, for more information. Soul under the tree? Why are you asking about this? This was Brother Yu's specialty. He didn't answer the question and instead started with the gossip. I met their guild leader. My quest might have something to do with them. At this time, Gu Fei could already see that there were quite a few people gathered in the crater. Looking up under the tree had clearly received some sort of quest. This place was also heavily guarded. This fellow had immediately recognized him and wasn't in a rush to make a move. Instead, he was talking about all sorts of things. Gu Fei decided to first investigate his background. Guild leader? Looking up under the tree? Brother, you said. This guild is only level 2. Moreover, I heard that their players haven't maxed out their stats yet. However, they seem to have quite a bit of power. The rumors say that this looking up under the tree is a rich sugar daddy. However, my brother Yu has some unusual insider information. Hurry up and say it. Gu Fei was anxious. This brother Yu must definitely enjoy his information. Keeping him in suspense, Gu Fei and looking up under the tree didn't have anything else to say. According to my reliable information, this looking up under the tree shouldn't be a sugar daddy. He should be someone from a gaming studio, a proper professional gamer. The so-called power they have is probably because they temporarily recruited some part-time players when they were doing business with their gaming studio. Brother, you said. Gaming studio. Which one? Due to Five Night's sinister face, Gu Fei didn't have a good impression of gaming studios. That I'm not sure. What quest did you meet with them? Brother, you continued to gossip. I can't say that. There's someone behind the wall. Gu Fei said. Brother, you was silent. Gu Fei directly provoked the Han family young master. He didn't want to get involved. Was the Han family young master someone who would be bullied? He naturally retorted. You've said enough. Wandering under the tree? Don't run too fast. Do you dare to fight me one-on-one? Do you dare to drink with me? What kind of skill is drinking? You think violence can solve everything? It can't solve everything, but it can solve you. This daddy can instantly kill you just by drinking. Not only will I get rid of you, I can also relieve myself. Wahahaha. Gu Fei was speechless. In terms of bickering, he didn't seem to be a match for the Han family young master. Everything had to be trained. The Han family young master's proficiency in insulting people was too high. Gu Fei wisely kept his mouth shut. When they met, he would cut him 180 times and let him know what was more useful. Gu Fei thought. Brother Qianli, Brother Qianli? Gu Fei was challenging the Han family young master. For a moment he forgot to reply perfunctorily. Under the tree sky gazing. This guy saw that Gu Fei suddenly didn't respond. He called out twice in succession. And the few people around him already had a strange look on their faces. At this time, Gu Fei suddenly reacted. What? I just mentioned that Brother Qianli passed by here. What's the matter? Under the tree sky gazing said. Gu Fei smiled and said. I'm just passing by because there's a quest that was assigned to this place. Butterfly knot. Originally there was no summary to talk about today, but someone said that it's not the update that you read every day, but the summary at the end of the chapter. So I specially added a sentence to let you read to your heart's content. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.